3 minutes after 10 is the time. A very good morning to you. I'm just going to do something, if you don't mind, a little bit of business. It's Tuesday, it's Tuesday, it's Tuesday, it's Tuesday, it's Tuesday, it's Tuesday, it's Tuesday. Because it feels like Monday. I appreciate you probably put in a shift yesterday. I didn't. And first shift of the week always feels like Monday. I will almost certainly get my days a little bit confused in the course of this morning. So apologies in advance for that. I can't work out, frankly, what to do about the air traffic control stuff. It's obviously a huge story, possibly even bigger than you realise if you haven't tried to fly this weekend. But I don't know that it lends itself to our pontifications every morning. Something that categorically does lend itself to our pontifications this morning is the news that the police do have the capacity to deal with every crime, which is wonderful news, isn't it? We'll dig into that in a minute. But first of all, just a few texts that have come into the show quite early this morning. This is from Andrew, who says, James, please, to dear God, don't talk about you, Les. I can't listen to another minute of it. As a Bedfordshire resident, I honestly thought that you would get a jingle before Doris resigned, but here we are. Joe in Doncaster writes, please tell me that you're opening the show with a final Doris watch. And, well, I mean, far be it from me to let anybody down, but she's gone. So I suppose... What? This weekend? Oh. Well, all right, then we better do a final one.
Doris Watch.
So I've waited months for that, and finally a listener sent it in. Couldn't even get my own production from my own team, my own staff. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If Andrew Marr wanted a jingle, he'd have had it by tea time on the day that he asked for it. But me, I'm just now going to have to calculate how long it took her to resign with immediate effect. So she went on the 9th, 21 takes it up to the 30th, and all of July, 30 days out of September, so that's 52. And then the 29th, it's Tuesday today, so 28th, 27th, 26th. 26 plus 52 is... 26 plus 52 is 78, is it? 26 plus 52, 78. 78 days it took Nadine Doris to resign with immediate effect. Well, we'll pause just for a moment to reflect upon this. This is how the country works now. You can cover yourself in disgrace. You can literally wake up in the morning, take a paint of disgrace out of your cupboard, a brush out of your drawer, paint yourself in disgrace, cover yourself in disgrace, both in the job and then in departing the job, and end up being rewarded by the UK media. It's quite incredible to think that that is how low we have been brought, largely by the continuing refusal to recognise the reality of all the lies surrounding Brexit and Boris Johnson. Doris becoming like a sort of a desiccated poster girl for delusion and denial, up to the point where now newspaper editors and media barons have to reward her with more prominence, because to do so, to recognise reality would be to admit the con that's been visited upon the country. Quite incredible. What did I say? How many days was it? 78, did I say? 78 days. Just imagine for a minute that Diane Abbott were to pledge that she was going to resign with immediate effect, and then 78 days later finally get around to sending a letter to the Daily Mail announcing it before it actually got sent to the Prime Minister. It makes a mockery of almost everything that we once, I'm not going to say held dear, almost everything that we once just took for granted. We just took for granted that politicians can't behave like that. And if they do, they get hounded out of town by the Fourth Estate. It is the job of the media to do that kind of thing. But here she is. So, well, there it is. I was hoping to, I'm sorry, but I'm only going to be able to use it once more.
Doris Watch.
So farewell then. Let's hope we never see your like again. 7 minutes after 10 is the time. Police forces have the manpower needed to investigate all crimes, the Home Secretary insisted yesterday. Coppers, call in first, please. 0345 6060973. I just want to know the truth. Hand on heart, what is going on? She may be talking out of her hat. She may not. There may be somewhere between the two posts that the truth lies. All forces in England and Wales Officers were told that there was no crime too minor to be probed. Police will be forced to act if there is tangible evidence to follow up, including CCTV footage, vehicle dash cams or phone tracking. So these are the questions. Why now do you not follow up crime reports where there is CCTV footage, vehicle dash cams or phone tracking? It would also mean that shoplifting, phone muggings, car theft and criminal damage get I mean, the more you look at this, the madder it begins to appear. It would be wonderful to live in the country where the police followed up all reasonable lines of inquiry. But I just want to know how feasible it is, given the job that you have, the bodies that are currently in place when you're on a shift, the prioritisation that you have with crimes presumably by rank of seriousness, when the Home Secretary turns around to you and says that you can investigate every single crime report properly, what do you say in return? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Now, in Greater Manchester, they have managed to do something that stands comparison with this. The Chief Constable there said they would investigate all crimes and follow up every reasonable line of inquiry. The force has since reported a 44% increase in charges in the year to March. There is much talk, of course, about recruitment, although, as one interview at the weekend pointed out, what they've really done is replace experienced officers who have left the force with much less experienced officers who, it has been suggested to me, are being recruited with a relatively low bar, given the desperation across the public services to recruit and retain. And in case you hadn't noticed, this is part of Crime Week. We've already had Small Boats Week, which saw the Tories' position in the polls get even worse than it was before it started. And we've had NHS Week, which saw the Tories' position in the polls get even worse than it had when it started. And now we've got Crime Week. There will be lots of announcements, lots of policy announcements made by the government this week. And I just want to know the score, all right? So how do we do this? What's the best way to do this? Because I don't know if we can confine it to police officers. It's 10 minutes after 10. I'll know in about 2 minutes. So if you are a police officer and you want to respond directly to the idea that you do have the manpower needed to investigate all crimes, and that you not only will but should be in following up on everything where there is CCTV footage, vehicle dash cams or phone tracking. No, and I think we need to look at it from the victim of crime perspective as well. So I'm going to pick on those specific examples, because that must be incredibly frustrating. I'm quite a naive fella. I'm a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm a bit more small C conservative than I realise. Although I like to think of myself as a small C conservative. Look, as a middle-aged, privately educated, straight white man, I am inevitably going to be small C conservative in some ways. But I did find myself, before I got this job, leaning towards support for the police in almost all circumstances. A presumption of good intention on the part of the police. I really did. And I would still like to, but I can't anymore. Not just the disgusting cases that have reached our ears and eyes in recent years, but also the below the line appalling conduct, the WhatsApp groups swapping disgusting messages, the misogyny, the racism that we know runs through the force at almost every level, because they tell us. A chief constable in London who doesn't like to use the word institutional racism because he thinks his own officers are too thick to understand what it means. I disagree with him on that front. I'm sure that they're bright enough to understand what it means. So the reason why the chief constable of the Metropolitan Police rejects the accurate description is something you'd have to ask him yourself. But I mention that because I'm not one of those lefties that likes bashing the police. I bash the police reluctantly and sadly, but I've been left with little choice to do. I think probably the penny drop moment was talking to people about stop and search policy in London and realising that there are 2, 3, 4 tiers of policing, and that your experience of policing, if you are poor or black or gay, is going to be very different from the experience of me, who is none of those things. But I still think there must be something, what's the word I'm looking for? Something really sort of infuriating is not strong enough. It's like an abuse of natural justice to turn up like I would, with little experience of the police, little interaction of the police, and thinking that you're giving them everything that they need to do their job. So you turn up with CCTV footage. I think we're the most surveilled city in the world, aren't we? In London, there's more CCTV cameras in London than any other city in the world. So you turn up with your CCTV camera footage, just presuming that the police will be able to go and collar the person that you've identified. You're a shopkeeper. You say, I know this bloke, he lives at number 44. Or I know this woman, it's Dirty Gertie from number 30. Get yourself round there and nick him. And the police, for some reason, can't do it. You've got dash cam footage with a number plate in it showing an offence being committed. But the police can't do anything with it. You've got phone tracking. You're saying to them, my phone is being tracked, it's on. Or you've got a tag. There's a story in the Mail today about a serial burglar who was caught because there was an AirTag in some of the kit that he nicked. But every phone has the potential for GPS tracking in it. You can literally tell someone, I've tracked my laptop to number 43 Acacia Avenue. Could you please go round and get it? And the police say no. So there are two questions at the moment. Why do they say no? Actually, that's not true. There's three questions. Have they said no to you? 0345 6060 973. I don't normally find these conversations massively interesting, but today there's an urgency to it. And I'm trying to imagine what I would be like if, when we got burgled, the tracking technology had been in place. And I said, look, here's my laptop. I can show you where it is. So the police officers told us that the crime was almost certainly committed by known individuals on the estate where we lived, which I found odd because I thought, can't you just knock their door down and look for my laptop and my passport? I missed my mate's wedding because they nicked my passport. And no, you can't do that. And I understand you can't go around kicking the door down without any suspicion, without any grounds for suspicion. But if you've got a GPS signature coming from a building and it is from your stolen property, I'd have thought that did give you grounds to investigate. So what has happened to you? Have they told you that they can't use the picture you've got of the criminal? They can't use the pictures you've got of the number plate. They can't use the evidence you've got of where your stolen property is. I just want to know what that's like. Then I want to know why the police do that. And I think I have to hear that either from someone to whom it has been explained by a police officer or someone from the police. 0345 6060 973. And I know there are limits and restrictions on what you can and can't say publicly. So you can go undercover if you want. We can give you an entire legend and a false identity. You can use a false name. But I really want, with reference to the Manchester example, so Manchester coppers would be particularly helpful in today's programme, with reference to the fact that in Manchester this has apparently worked, or at least that's how I'm seeing it reported this morning. What is your response as a serving or recently retired police officer to the Home Secretary's insistence after 13 years of Tory rule that you could actually be responding more meaningfully to every single reported crime? You are not currently responding substantively to every single reported crime. The Home Secretary says you should be and indeed could be. So the question of why aren't you is inevitable on the one hand, and on the other hand, of course, is could you really? So have you followed that? Are you still with me at the back? Can you get your teeth into all of that? The sheer effrontery of discovering or being told that despite you providing all the evidence, the police can't do anything about it. The insistence of the Home Secretary that despite the fact that countless crimes are currently not investigated, the police actually could be doing it, that's terrible for police morale. And that again turns the public against the police potentially. You're listening to this with a grievance about the time that you reported a crime and it wasn't reported, and now the Home Secretary is telling you, oh no, they could have done it, and I'll get 500 texts saying, drive in a bus lane, or I got followed when I took the wrong junction off the Spaghetti Junction, or something like that. And that apparently proves that police could be investigating more burglaries or more incidents of shoplifting. And then the sort of final question of, well, why wouldn't they be doing it if they could? 0345 6060 973. It's Tuesday morning. It's the first conversation that we've had together this week, which means your chances of getting through are probably the highest that they'll be all week. Hit the numbers now. You will get through. 20 minutes after 10 is the time. I think I might owe you an apology. I've been doing this so long now that conversations that we used to have on a regular basis have become a bit fatiguing. I get a bit bored of them. So I used to really like, have you solved a crime yourself? Or even occasionally a sort of have-a-go hero story. But you sort of begin to recognise the type, and then you get a little bit fatigued. But the more I think about it, the more outrageous it is that you could be standing in the street outside, 43 Acacia Avenue, and literally holding evidence in your hand that your stolen equipment is inside, because it's all fitted with GPS trackers these days, and the police tell you they can't do anything about it. Now, I've always taken the view, this is why I blathered on a minute ago about being, to my own surprise, a small C conservative. All I mean by that is I would take the view in that situation that the police would love to do more but genuinely can't. I think what Suella Braverman has said overnight, or said this morning, is essentially they're choosing not to because they could do more. And that's why I'm also... do you see the tension here? You could do more, but you're choosing not to? How does that reach your ears as a police officer? Jill's just texted in and say they can't be bothered, James. And that's what I mean by small C conservative. I don't go there. I always think the best of people, even Brexit voters. Compassion for the con, contempt for the con men. But maybe I'm just being a bit of a plum. And you're sitting there thinking, honestly, James, what would you do given the chance? Talk for 3 hours or get the same money for sitting there with your feet up playing Sudoku? No, you know me, I'd probably choose to talk for 3 hours. Jane's in Guildford. Jane, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. So, my partner and I were burgled, and this was in June. We had about £32,000 worth of equipment stolen. We're both professional athletes.
Gosh.
And we had £32,000 worth of sports equipment that was stolen from us.
Crikey.
We managed, through word of mouth and through social media, we managed to trace the items back to someone local who had stolen it.
Were they trying to sell it?
Yeah.
That's how you
trying
traced
to get
it.
rid of it.
Yes.
Yeah. We ended up going to the police with all the evidence that we'd tried to get this stuff back. They didn't do anything. They said they'd investigate certain aspects. A month later, we had to contact them to get some information from them. They said that they were still investigating the crime. Eventually, we got contacted by someone in Hungary who said that that it was bikes. So our bikes had been sold in Poland, and they were being sold in Poland. We went to the police with that information. Then nothing was done.
How did the person in Poland know that they were... Sorry, this is me being a right pain in the butt, Jane. How did I'm just fascinated by the wrinkles in stories like this and the avenues. How did the person in Poland know that they were your bikes? I presume at that price they're pretty distinctive.
Yeah, they were really distinctive, and through social media. So it was literally the power of social media that got them, seen. We ended up tracing them to Poland through the help of a private investigator.
Who you hired at your own cost?
Yeah, we hired at our own cost. Yeah, it cost in the region of about £2,500 to try and track this stuff down. Mm-hmm. We got it back. Well, we found all the information. We went to the police. We actually went and stood at a police station and said, look, this is everything we've got. The person who was selling it was a Polish resident that had a business that was registered in the UK to a residential property in Leicester. We went to Leicester Police. They did nothing.
Oh, this is incredible.
They went to Leicester.
What did they tell you? What did they tell you when they were doing nothing? What did they say to you? So let's just go back a bit. The first person that you contacted, the first police officer you spoke to, when he said, oh, look, we found our bikes. They're for sale on, getmybike.com. What did they say to that?
They said that they would investigate it. And then when we did our own investigation, they were astounded by how much information that we'd gathered through a private investigator and acknowledged that that this was our property. Yeah.
But it's in Poland by now. They're dealing with their shop.
By then it was.
They're mopping their brow in amazement at your investigatory skills, and the bike's got it all the way to Poland or Hungary.
Yeah, so it's all the way in Poland. They were astounded, and then they said that they couldn't help us right now because the officer that was dealing with it wasn't on shift.
Right.
So we ended up going to the person that was selling it, presenting them with all the evidence that we had on them,
Yeah.
and saying, look, if you don't give us our stuff back, we're going to go to the police, in the hope that they had no idea how inadequate the police force was. We took a gamble.
But they'd be like me. They'd be like me. They'd just presume that the police were in this sort of situation with all of this evidence.
We took a gamble, and the gamble paid off, but we did have to drive all the way to Poland to go and get our property back. It cost £2,500. We had absolutely none of the evidence that we gathered was through the
police.
help.
So it was all doable.
It
was all fairly, and presumably, if the police had got their backside in gear, pardon the pun, they would have got it before it left the country.
I don't know.
Well, when it was up for sale, you found it up for sale the first time. It was probably still in this country, or do you think it was?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was.
Well, someone is selling my stolen equipment, so how can they not be under arrest? They're literally selling my stolen equipment.
Everything that we traced came back to the UK, and the British police did nothing. They did nothing.
That's incredible. And just, again, more out of my curiosity than any necessary relevance to the story that you're telling, do you think the person that you contacted in Poland knew it was stolen, or do you think they were surprised to discover that? I think you've answered that question.
I think when we spoke to the individual, they denied categorically and denied, but the person that we were due to meet, the seller, they didn't turn up. They sent somebody else. Yeah,
so there's probably
they knew.
a
and I would say
supply
they're
line.
Still operating. Yeah, I'd say they're still operating in the UK, and nothing's been done. All the evidence is there. We were having conversations with somebody through a text message, so it could all be traced back to the UK. The police were presented with it. They still did nothing.
I mean, it is incredible. Were you shocked?
No.
You weren't? Have you had experiences? Because I think that the bit I'm trying to get past is almost the emotional impact of standing there. But I've got the evidence in my hand, and officer, I'm old enough to have been told to go, if I got lost in town, go and find a police officer.
Yeah, and then the ironic thing was that once we'd got our property back, the police officer that was investigating our crime then contacted us the day after we got back from Poland and said, I just wondered if you could pass me all the information that you gathered.
No, well, I'm not often lost for words. What? And so you paid for an investigator, and then you paid for your travel, and then you paid for the transport to get the bikes back to Britain. How much were you in for all in?
I think we are currently about £5,000.
And the alternative was to be 32,000. Could you not have got the insurance back? Some people will be wondering.
Do you know what, James? That was the answer that I got. Yeah. That was the answer that I got from every police officer. Yeah, but you are insured. So what? Doesn't matter. That some of those bikes, the bikes that were stolen from us, some of them were custom, some of them were, the sentimental value, races that had been won on them, everything. And you can't. I know it seems silly because it just seems like push bikes, but it could have been anyone. It could be
silly to me.
Rolex.
Doesn't seem silly at all. No, I hear you. Well, that's a perfect start. And I can use you now, Jane, very cynically to say to people, don't ring me with your stories about stolen bikes unless they were worth more than £32,000, because Jane has now set that bar gratifyingly high. And bizarrely, it has a happy ending of sorts in that you were reunited with your property. I mean, in defence of the officer, as Julian Suffolk points out, we don't know how many other cases he had on his plate. So that's what I mean by this somewhat lazy and I suspect misplaced presumption I have that you're all doing your best. I like being in that position, even if it means that I'm wrong. I'd rather be proved wrong on this than start off from the position of presuming the worst about everybody. There's enough of that on your radio. 10:29 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 33 minutes after 10 is the time. I knew this would happen. I'm not complaining. I'm categorically not complaining. But I am inundated with tales of uninvestigated crimes, and I am not being inundated yet with officers responding to the Home Secretary's claim that you have both the resources and the capability to investigate every crime that's reported to you, and therefore implicitly, under my reading of this intervention from the ridiculous Home Secretary, you must be choosing somehow not to. A message from a sergeant in Greater Manchester Police, which is cited in some of the coverage as an example of what every officer should be doing. It is not the police that the finger should be wiggled at. It's the government, James. Police aren't lazy or can't be bothered. There are simply not enough of us. 20 years ago, there was double the amount of officers in GMP, Greater Manchester Police, and double the officers meant more crime could be properly investigated. Stop blaming the police. We are overworked and underpaid. I'm just going to defend myself briefly on this one. I have spent the entire morning saying that I am minded to presume that you are doing your best and that it is an issue of resources and that the Home Secretary is once again talking out of her fundament. But I do understand how it reaches your ears as yet more attacks upon your uniform. Do you think we want to just close every investigation and allow people to commit crime without punishment? Really, James? Why do you think we join the police? Yet again, the police are being blamed for something that they have no control over. Well done to all British officers out there still coming in after getting battered from every angle every day and still doing your best. Anyone with half a brain understands that this is not your fault. Try not to take it personally. You've gone a little bit further than me, but I am on the same side of that particular contention at the moment. You know, it's unlikely the Home Secretary is going to drop by and explain how she knows that you're capable of doing more and you're somehow choosing not to. But my gut reaction, even after Jane's, borderline farcical story of the disappearing bicycles, my gut reaction is to presume that you are more sinned against than sinning and that you are victims of cuts and circumstances as opposed to architects of your own unpopularity. But it's a phone-in show for a reason. Susan Guildford. Sue, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hello, James.
Hello,
a couple of incidents recently that I phoned into the police. The most recent was a child around the age of 8 was walking down the road. I don't know whether it was his father or a relation, was following in the car. They were clearly having sort of Barney. Right. The child was being really stroppy, not wanting to get into the car. So I could see this was going to evolve. So I filmed it, and the child kept walking, and the man followed him down the road, sort of screeching off in his car at one point. Followed the child down the road, and then the man actually mounted the pavement with his car towards the child. Now, I don't think he was purposely going to hit the child, but the point is the child did take evasive action, ran down the road. The man followed him down on foot and brought him back and put him in the car. I filmed the entire event, called it into the police.
What's the effect? I think I did that once with my mum.
Yeah, and I feel, you know, I've worked in child protection, so sure. I'm fully aware of arguments that take place. But I just felt the mounting of the curb. Yeah. And the sort of general risky aggression in the incident.
What did the police say when you rang? Well, I think we'll confine ourselves just to the one incident, if that's all right with you, Sue. What did the police say when you rang them?
Well, I must add as well that I was 99% sure I knew who he was and where he lived. My video was not clear enough for his registration, but I was absolutely sure I knew who it was. I told the police that. And no, you know, they've done nothing. They haven't come to see me. They haven't looked at my video. You know, it's...
I may have misunderstood you slightly, but I'm not. And it also, I mean, coming on after someone whose £32,000 worth of bicycles were on sale in Poland while the police were doing nothing. What would you want them to do on this occasion?
Given that I told them I was 99% sure.
Yes, but what have they done wrong? What would they be investigating? The mounting of the curb?
Yeah, yes. I mean, the sort of the aggressive
imagine that
move.
All the available officers were dealing with, vulnerable people. They might have been sitting in A&E with a. I mean, I don't want to sound facetious, but what was exactly the problem here?
Well, it was a very aggressive move towards a fairly young child. Yeah. The child was running off. The child was clearly not happy. Yes, it could just have been sort of a normal argument between.
But who knows? And if it had gone bad and the police, I mean, you'd have felt awful if you hadn't reported it. And then, of course, if it had gone and escalated, you'd have felt even more awful that the police hadn't responded. But I think you do remind us of the inevitability of some sort of hierarchy. And if you're operating a control room and deciding where to send officers, I would have some sympathy for the person that decided possibly that wasn't blues and twos territory. But you sound like a very concerned citizen, and we certainly need more of those. 10:39 is the time. Mark's in Bracknell. Mark, what would you like to say?
Hi there, James. Great show.
Where are all the coppers? Where's the copper when you need? It's almost the theme of. You're another aggrieved victim of crime. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Where
absolutely.
are all the police officers when you need? They're all out flipping solving crimes. That's what they're doing, Mark. They're not available for phone-ins when you want them. What happened to you?
They were fantastic for me.
There we go.
They were absolutely fantastic. And I will say, I've been broken into 3 times in the past 12 months.
Blimey.
I run a small tree surgery company in Bracknell, and
what, bonsai?
we had. Yeah, I like that. That's good. I'll use that. We were broken into. We had £17,000 worth of chainsaws stolen, and the police did their absolute best and put their resources into finding absolutely nothing. And there was no leads, no nothing. Anyway, a good friend of mine said, "Why don't you put Apple AirTags in them just in case?"
Yes.
So I did put Apple AirTags in them, and we got broken into again about 3 months ago, and they took everything in a completely different way. They broke through a brick wall. They spent an hour there. And
so you showed them the Apple. You showed them the GPS.
Yes,
signature.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm making up this lingo, Mark. I've no idea whether it's a signature. You showed them the bleepy bit. This is what I do to find my phone in the house.
Over the moon. They chased it. They showed up at a site down the road, not far away from us, a particular site where people live in, not buildings.
So it was a traveller's site.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't need to tread on eggshells, because I'm automatically wondering whether that makes the police somehow a little bit more.
Well, they sent in armed response and dog units there,
right.
And because they showed up there, and when they were on the way there, or when I was on the way there, because they said don't go there, so of course we went there, and we basically saw them on the move, and they were on the M4, and they were heading up the M4, and we had 6 police cars with us, and I was on the phone to the police saying they're at this destination, and it turns out that they were given a tip-off and they dumped all the tools up in Slough, and we found the tools about an hour later.
Where were they? Just by the side of a road, or?
They chucked them over a hedge, and they, along with a load of other building materials. But we had photographs, we had CCTV. I will say the police were absolutely fantastic, and they're still coming back to me now. We've got they've done a WhatsApp group with rural crime all around the area. They contact us regularly, telling us that there's nothing else they found and they can't do anything.
That's incredible.
I think they're just there's not enough of them.
No, well, I don't know that anyone except the Home Secretary thinks that there is enough of them. I mean, there's a limit. I keep getting messages telling me there are big limits on what police officers can actually tell me today with regards to what they think about the actual Home Secretary, who's sort of ultimately their boss. But I think the rest of us can fill in the gaps. You see, my bleeding liberal heart, Mark, now worries that if you want your crime to be investigated, tell the police it was committed by travellers, and you'll go straight to the front of the queue. But that's just.
Well, I've got to be honest. I'd like everybody. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Everybody said, "Oh, it's definitely the travellers," And I said, "Well, no, you can't. There's no evidence." Unfortunately, we did have the evidence, but unless they're caught in the act, the police said there's nothing we can do.
In the act of possession, as well as the act of theft.
Yes.
So if they'd found them with the kit in their hands, they'd have been banged to rights. But and of course, the criminals know the law; they know exactly what can and can't be collared. But you're chiefly concerned with the return of your goods. So what did your chainsaws have that Jane's bicycles didn't? Is the question.
Well, it was Apple AirTags. They connect to your Apple phone, and every time they're near a Wi-Fi.
I know what, and I'm not that bloody stupid. I know what an Apple AirTag is, but she had pictures of her bikes for sale.
Yeah.
Her actual, but I suppose you can't argue with an Apple AirTag, can you? Well, except for this, actually, except for my mate Nick, who's just been in touch to say we had people banging on our door a couple of weeks ago saying that their phone was inside because my iPhone app was telling them, and it really wasn't. So it's not foolproof, but on the case of something like that, it's obviously reliable enough. I like that, and I'm glad you're there with a tale of things being done well, because police officers get the hump, and you can understand why. But I'm doing my best to fight your corner. You could back me up a bit, but you're choosing not to. James, you're not getting calls from police officers because we're fed up of explaining ourselves to people who don't understand what we do on a daily basis. It's a great show, and it's good that at least some positive experiences are being shared. But you should. I promise you, on this programme, people are clever enough to understand what's going on. I'm not going to be telling you nonsense about nonsenses. You could explain why the Home Secretary has got this horribly wrong. To be fair, she's never got anything right. So, albeit that a stop clock can be right twice a day, some elements of Nadine Doris's hilarious resignation letter, I think, get filed under the stop clock right twice a day tag. But your gut reaction, your sincere response to being told by the Home Secretary that there's plenty of you to be doing much, much more, and the implication therein that you're choosing not to. Colin's in Reading. Colin, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I was a former, it's called the Contact Management Centre officer at Thames Valley Police, so where we take 999 and 111 non-emergency calls.
Right. Perfect.
So the reason for my call is to try and sort of shed some light on how policing sort of operates currently.
I think I need to give you a bit more time than I currently have available, Colin. Is it all right if I come back to you after the break?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Keith doesn't like me calling it a break. What should I call it instead? Junction. Come back after the junction. No. 10:48 is the time. We might as well get our money's worth, because I think I may have made a boo-boo earlier, and that means that we can, for the second last time ever, do this again.
Doris Watch.
Nice jingle. Ben Kentish, of course, reported on the 27th, which is Sunday, that Nadine Doris didn't actually send her resignation letter, which begins "Dear Prime Minister" to Rishi Sunak. She just published it in the Mail. The first he saw of the letter, according to Ben Kentish's impeccable sources, was when he was told that the Mail had published it. So that's why it was just in Thomas's news bulletin that now she's formally resigned. It's actually today. So we need to do another calculation. It won't take as long as the last one, because all I've got to do is add 3. 78 plus 3 is 81. So now it is 81 days since Nadine Doris promised to resign with immediate effect. And I can tell you, on Tuesday, August the 29th, 2023, that Nadine Doris has now resigned after 81 days.
Doris Watch.
Oh. Well, we might have to worry about that again, will we? I hit the lens of the camera then. It was a great throw. Back to Colin in Reading on the question of what's going on. So that you can pick and choose which elements you prefer. You can address the people who can't quite believe that their crimes aren't being solved after they've done all the detective work. Or you can address the Home Secretary's claim that you could easily be investigating all the crimes that are reported and that you are therefore presumably somehow choosing not to. Or you could do something completely different. It's entirely up to you. Colin, over to you.
Hi, James. Yeah, I mean, the Home Secretary's comments are nothing short of just gaslighting officers. It's quite a disgrace that she's willing to throw officers under the bus to protect her party's policies. I mean, do you really believe officers don't care? I mean, do we really
personally, no, but you know, and I know that the public can be persuaded into all sorts of weird positions by the right rhetoric and propaganda.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, so just sort of shed some light. So where I work in Thames Valley Police, we really are understaffed, and so what ends up happening is the focus then shifts away from being from humane policing more towards business efficiency, and that's why you see certain crimes which people reported as criminal damage or theft being overlooked, because then there's a hierarchy of crimes where it's fine, it's a theft of your valuable equipment, but, you've got more serious crime to deal with, because of, sometimes serious assault.
Well, I can see prioritising the safety of humans over the location of goods is an unfortunate but understandable situation.
No, it's not just justification, it's more a description of what's happened. So because we're understaffed,
yes,
it's being run like a business, the police force. So it's more of, where can we now cut corners what we call operational efficiency is what
Yes.
we term it.
Yes.
Where we can sort of shed off the burden of these, in inverted commas, lower level crimes. And so it was quite a dramatic shift when I joined. So it was a complete different mindset when I first joined.
Yeah.
Where this philosophy of, there's a psychological element to crime, and so, no crime is too small. And so when I first joined in 2016, if you suffered a theft or criminal damage with no lines of inquiry, it was our policy that we must come and see you. So a local PCSO would come and see you during the week, because it was important for an officer to sort of see you in person. But then there was a sudden U-turn all of a sudden where we said, no, this is a waste of time. And so we said, we're not interested in seeing people who've, had their bike nicked or whatever. Just give the reference number and, on your way. But we're so understaffed where, just to give you an idea of how bad it is, part of my tenure, I went into criminal investigation, and I was put on the bulking desk. So bulking is where you fill up petrol and you just drive off without paying.
Yeah.
When I started, there was no one there. So when I joined, no one had been on a desk for I don't know how long.
Right.
And there was a 2-month backlog on the cases, 2 months.
Grief.
And I said to the manager, I said, these cases are 2 months old. And I was instructed, anything over 4 weeks, just file it. So for that whole month in Thames Valley Police, nobody was investigated for stealing petrol. And the way you file it is, so as I say, business efficiency, because we're so stretched, we look for wiggle room to get out of crime, to get out of investigating crime. And so, to give an idea of how outrageous it was, so for theft of petrol, we run a PNC check, so we know who the insured driver is.
Yes.
Now, one example was the BP station described it as a male driver. I ran a PNC check. The registered keeper and the main driver is a female, right?
Yeah.
However, there is a named male driver on the PNC check.
Right.
But I had to go with the main driver is a woman. It does not match the description, therefore it's filed. So we look for any excuse. However, if I dug deeper, it's very clear that the named driver, possibly her son, was the one driving. But now I'm sort of wasting resources for a petty crime, just wrap it up and move on, mate. That's the attitude in policing. And it's not because we can't bother to investigate crimes. It's because the control room sergeants, inspectors have a hierarchy of crime. If you have a limited number of officers, you have to assign them to the more serious crimes, such as rape, assault, burglaries.
But this,
so you have no choice.
I'm getting told off for interrupting again today. You'd think people would be used to it by now, Colin, wouldn't you? The explanation to me is both plausible and pretty close to inevitable. But and this is why I think you reserved quite strong language with the Home Secretary at the outset. She's trying to create, in the minds of the public, the idea that you are, or your former colleagues, are somehow choosing. Someone should ask, what do you think they're doing instead?
Yes. Officers in the control room, we would send them to crimes like ping pong balls. They had no time for lunch break.
Sure.
It's that stretch in the control room where I was. We have these big 32-inch, widescreen tellies with the number of calls stacking.
Right.
So it's so bad where you would see there are like 10, 11 calls waiting, and the control room officer, the sergeant, would tell us to sort of wrap up the calls quickly.
Yeah.
So it's in the contact management center. The environment is so bad. So we are very much scrutinized. So she can see what we're doing, because in the control room where I worked, this is how bad it is. Everything, every movement of ours is tracked. So once a month, our team leader would show us a graph. The graph would show us how long we took to go to the toilet, how long we took on calls, and what our personal breaks.
This is so unfair. So you're getting gypped from the Home Secretary for not doing enough, and you're being treated like infants when you are at work. Who have to? I always remember.
Someone should send this Home Secretary our graphs of our toilet breaks. She knows exactly how long we took to go to the toilet and how long we took taking calls. That's how bad it is in Thames Valley Police. We have bar graphs to track each and every single minute of our movements. How long we took on each call, how long we took a break, how long we came back from the break. And so
she knows this. I mean, the
problem.
problem, as ever, when we're discussing Suella Braverman, is that either she is being deliberately deceitful or she's too stupid to understand very simple things that are right under her nose. And I mean, you're the detective. You tell me. I mean, it's just grimly unfair, isn't it? It's unfair on everybody, It's unfair on the people who are ringing in, grossly unfair on the people who are ringing in, grossly unfair on the officers who are unable to do the job that they signed up to do and therefore receive attacks and abuses that are almost entirely undeserved in this context. There'll be a couple of lazy coppers, there are lazy radio presenters, there's lazy producers in every profession. There's lazy people, but then the Home Secretary comes along and deliberately creates in the minds of the public the idea that the reason why these crimes are not being properly investigated is because of a lack of commitment or a lack of will on the part of the police officers who she is supposed to be protecting and championing.
I think she's protecting and championing her own party politics.
Well, I mean, I would agree with you normally, but I'm too thick today to see what it is she thinks, except I suppose the red meat of finding something else to abuse, something else to attack, something else to encourage other people to attack, even if it is against their own interests, in this case, it clearly is. The public should be agitating for a reversal of cuts or for more money to be spent on the police or attacking the party that presided over the decline that you've described since 2016. And, of course, longer-serving officers would track that decline back to 2010. I think it was in 2016 that Theresa May, the then Home Secretary, stood up in front of the Police Federation conference in Manchester and insisted that cutting police numbers would have no effect whatsoever upon the force's capacity to investigate crimes. It is, I mean, frankly, breathtaking, and on it goes. Thank you, Colin. You filled a much-needed space in the conversation, and I'm gratified by that, in a way, or comforted, if that's the right word. The idea that, actually, I understand the reality of the invitation to attack police officers. Don't worry, Scott in Kenilworth. Colin is recently stepped down from the job that he described. Otherwise, you would be right, he would be sacked, and that's part of the reason why these conversations are almost impossible to have with serving police officers. I see that Peter Kirkham was on the line to come up next, another former police officer, often to be heard on LBC, providing expert analysis. Although on this occasion we're out of time, Peter, I'm grateful for your call. That's the problem, is that Suella Braverman knows that she is essentially demonising a section of society, a section of the public sector that are voiceless, that are unable to answer back. I don't know quite who she thinks wins in this scenario. The public get angrier, the police get even more demoralised, and most of us, everyone with a functioning cerebral cortex, concludes that Suella Braverman might be even more unpleasant and unintelligent than we thought she was an hour ago. 3 minutes after 11 is the time. Good grief, we could have carried on with that conversation about the police scenario for a very long time. It's fair to say there wasn't a single syllable of support for Suella Braverman, but such is the land we live in now. Who are you going to attack next? Refugees hasn't worked, has it? Well, let's attack the police then, lads. That is it. That's the conversation in the Home Office. Who are we going to attack next? No, refugees was so last week. I mean, literally, actually. Oh, actually, it was the week before. Refugees were so the week before last. And it's the NHS week, and they end up attacking doctors and nurses who are on strike for a fair wage. And now it's Law and Order Week, or whatever they're going to call it, and they've ended up attacking the police. It's Crime Week. It's Crime Week every week with this lot. 4 minutes after 11 is the time. One of my favourite subjects next. I don't know, actually. One of the nice things about being on the road in November with the new book is that some of the questions from the audience, very, very gratifyingly for me, reflect the small number of people who were listening to this programme in the earliest days. I mean, a tiny fraction of something like a fifth of the audience that we've got now. But sometimes I get asked the question about something that may have been a regular part of the programme 10 years ago or even a regular feature 15 years ago. And it's lovely, actually. There's a sort of weird nostalgia for the time we spent together when we were often, it seemed, sort of barking into the dark. And selective education was a fascination of mine. But I wonder whether it still is, actually. As you find, don't you, your interest change as you get older. I was at the garden centre this week. I was more excited about going to the garden centre this weekend than I would have been about going to the Reading Festival with one of my children. I literally stood on the railway platform thinking, what would you rather be doing, mate? Would you rather be going to the garden centre to buy some hose connections and some lawn food? and I thought I might treat myself to one of those sort of wheelie things that you use to feed the lawn? Or would you rather be going to the Reading Festival with the kids? And I, hand on heart, and much to my own disappointment, because I don't really want to be this person, but you've got to speak as you find, I was more excited about... No, I tell a lie. I wasn't just going to the garden centre. I was going to John Lewis as well, to the white goods department at John Lewis, because we need a new fridge. So that little combination there on a bank holiday Monday, John Lewis, white goods department, not that they're white anymore, but you know what I'm talking about. John Lewis and the garden centre on a bank holiday Monday. That is living the dream. Or would you rather go and see Billie Eilish at the Reading Festival? No, sorry. Look, there are acts that perhaps would have seen me prioritise a visit to a music festival over a visit to John Lewis and the garden centre, but they weren't at Reading this year, I don't believe. So that's what I mean by tastes changing and interests changing. One of the reasons why my attitude towards selective education has changed is you, actually. The way you and Michael Gove. I bet you didn't even know that you and Michael Gove were in bed together, did you, on this issue and possibly others? I used to think that selective education was best because I used to think that it really suited me. And unless I'd been a phone-in host, unless I'd had... And, of course, you can be a phone-in host and never change your opinion about everything. You'd still be wanging on about the Notting Hill Carnival today, for example, after 30 years of wanging on about the Notting Hill Carnival. But if you are going to listen to the people that are paying you the compliment of ringing into your show, then you will sometimes find your needle moving. And I realised, thanks to you, thanks to teachers in particular ringing in, that I was Michael Gove. And that's not something anybody wants to wake up and realise in the morning. My approach to education, I even had a look, researching the new book, at Dominic Cummings' essay. He called it an essay on education. Do you know how long it was? It was 270 pages long. He wrote it, I think, while he was working for Michael Gove at the Department of Education. He called it an essay. An essay? Flipping heck. 270 pages long. When I was at college, I was watching the word count from pretty much paragraph 2, trying to get it up to an acceptable figure for being able to hand it in and claim that I'd finished. Cummings is doing this for fun in his own time. 270,000. I think it's called an Odyssean education or something like that. Bits of it are interesting. But similarly... It's a really hard trap to break out of. Thinking about coursework. Do you remember when coursework was introduced? A lot of this is going to depend on your age. I was very cross about coursework. And I thought that it's a very bad way to educate students, coursework. You should test them on exams. And then you said to me once, why do you think like that? And I said, well, because it's true, it works. And you said, but who does it work for? I said, well, it works for me. Oh, God. I'm basing my entire attitude to education on what would suit me best as a slightly weird, freakish individual who could somehow do very well in exams, having dossed about for most of the academic year, which is not a skill set I'm proud of anymore. I watch young people now putting in a proper shift studying, and I know that they're going to be much better equipped for the real world than I was. They're going to have a depth of knowledge rather than the ability to recite a few poems or tell you a bit about Charlemagne. They're actually going to understand stuff, and it's all going to be there forever. It's not just going to be there for the 6 hours that you need it to be there on exam day. But I could do that. I could sit up, and I kid you not, I could eat Nescafe with a teaspoon, stay up all night, go into the exam hall at 10 o'clock the next morning, smash it out of the park, and then by tea time that day I'd forgotten about... And I say smash it out of the park. I'd get a B. I wouldn't always get an A. And then I'd forgotten it all by tea time. And it was in the course of doing this job that you pointed out to me that the massive majority of students would thrive much better in the opposite scenario, where if you were putting in a shift all year and handing in good work all year, but are frightened of exams, or you struggle in that very specific hothouse environment, or you simply had a bad day, it's palpably ridiculous to hang so much upon a 3-hour window at the end of a 365-day-long year. And I didn't like the lesson that you taught me. I didn't like the conclusion you were leading me to, but I had to take it. I had to accept it. I had to accept that I was being a bit of a divot. Well, what would be a more accurate word? That's not an invitation. But the idea that I wonder if there's probably a German word for it. I don't know that there's an English word for it, apart from Michael Gove. You want to recreate the world in a way that best suits your talents and attributes, to the exclusion, even if it's the massive majority of people who have different talents and attributes from you. And that was my approach to education. So I read this story in the Times yesterday with a curious mixture of wonderment and fascination. Bright pupils, and listen, I'm putting myself in that category, all right? That's part of the point of this conversation. But bright is a multifaceted phrase. Bright could mean the kid who gets an A star after doing brilliant coursework and having a mediocre exam, or it could mean the kid who gets an A star after messing around all year and acing it in an exam situation. But we're talking about bright pupils are more likely to get top GCSE grades at comprehensive schools than grammar schools, according to research. So if you go to a selective state school, so even if the school that you're thinking about has got grammar in the title, it doesn't qualify unless it's a selective state school, okay? So not a fee-paying school. Confirm no benefit on children who are already high achieving at age 11 and may even put them at a disadvantage. I just find this fascinating. So they looked at 500,000 pupils across comprehensives and grammars, including in areas where parents could choose, and they found that the highest achievers at 11 were less likely to achieve 5 high GCSE grades if they went to a grammar school than if they went to a comprehensive, once they'd taken out other factors. So the challenge is to the belief that academic children do better at selective schools. It's been contested by the Grammar School Heads Association, but, I mean, it has to be, doesn't it? They can hardly turn around and ignore it or agree with it. But it's been published in the peer-reviewed journal, Educational Review, and it found little difference in GCSE pass rates between areas with grammar schools and those that are non-selective. So we can dig into this a bit, but I'd rather start with your immediate reaction to my simplification of the broader story, which is why, as someone like me who just has an interest in educational matters, or indeed as a teacher, or as a bright kid, a bright child, who went to a grammar school and didn't do as well at 16 as everybody presumed you would do when you were 11. Why would going to a selective school, if you're already the highest, this is about the highest achievers, why would a selective school have a deleterious impact on the highest achieving 11-year-olds? I don't know. And I don't want to read the next bit of the story where it is possibly explained until you've told me what you think. So here is a comprehensive school, and here is a state grammar school. So a selective school. You have to pass an exam to get into it, ordinarily the 11 plus. If you are high achieving at 11, so if you sail into a selective grammar school, you are going to do worse in your GCSEs than if you'd gone to the comprehensive school round the corner. And my first question for you at 11:15 this morning is, why might that be? So I don't want to get stuck in yet to the politics of grammar schools or the politics of selective schools or the politics of education. I just want you to tell me, from whatever perspective you enjoy, why the highest achieving 11-year-olds, because there's a presumption, isn't there, that the grammar schools, people move house. I've got friends who've moved house in order to be in the catchment area for selective grammar schools. And the presumption is that will give them it's a difference. Crucial difference here is the highest achieving. So if you're an average kid who has scraped over the 11 plus because mum and dad have paid a fortune for private tuition, nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticising, I'm just describing it. Then you're going to thrive in a grammar school. But why would the highest achieving children going to a selective school, and yeah, I am thinking of myself, all right? I know that's a bit cocky, but I've got the receipts. Why would I have done worse at a grammar school than I'd have done worse at a grammar school than a comprehensive school? Because I can't think of an explanation. And I love the conversations that we have when I start from a position of complete bafflement. Why? They offer some suggestions, none of them definitive, but why would the highest achieving 11-year-olds do worse at the selective grammar schools that they have sailed into than they would at the comprehensive schools that the world and his wife can go to, regardless of academic ability? It's 11:15. The number you need is 0345 6060973. Of course, just glancing at the screen, I realise I could be now describing you. I've described myself a bit, as I often do on the programme. I could have described you. You were absolute top stream, top of the class at 11, sailed into grammar school, and then did nowhere near as well as you expected. And you may not have realised that you would have done better at comprehensive school, but there's a very real chance that you would have done. Why might that be? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It is 18 minutes after 11, and it's a fascinating question. You build an educational system, or rather our presumptions about our educational system are built upon the idea that going to selective schools is better. And yet, the research published in the Educational Review, peer-reviewed research published in the Educational Review, reported in the Times yesterday and elsewhere today, claims that, or shows that, the cleverest 11-year-olds do worse at grammar school, do worse at selective schools than they do at comprehensive, equal entry schools. And I am just literally wondering why, because I find stuff like this absolutely riveting. Sarah's in Cheltenham. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello, Sarah.
I think this is one of those things that's news to you and maybe some of your middle-class friends who've moved to grammar school areas. This is a bit controversial.
Well, it's news to everybody, Sarah, which is why it's in the news.
It's news. You're right.
Yes.
You're right.
But you
comprehensive school teachers. Well, in my experience, which is 25 years in school and so doing teacher training, comprehensive school teachers are better. I'm afraid it's as simple as that.
No, I need to just clarify one thing. The selective schools do better for everybody except the highest achieving kids.
Yes. Okay, yes. But what this is about that as a comprehensive school teacher, what you do is if you have that high achieving end,
yes,
you're going to get a lot more attention, sadly, as a high ability child in a mainstream school than you would in a grammar.
Well, that's nothing to do with being better teachers, is it? That's unfair.
Well, you might say it's unfair. I would look at it from the point of view of why certain individuals choose to go and work in certain institutions. I would look at it from the point of view of the kind of, in the past, the kind of things that, so teachers who trained when I did 20 years ago were exposed to in comprehensive schools, lots and lots of centralised government, like training materials, programs, ways of teaching.
Let's slow down a little bit and focus in on the question, because it's not about 100% of pupils. It's about, I think, 5 to 10% of them who at 11 are the highest achievers and go to a comprehensive school and end up performing better than they would have done at a grammar school. The 90 to 95% of pupils are doing worse than they would at the selective school. So talk me through how that proves the ones doing worse. No, this is why I asked you to slow down and focus on this question. Talk me through how the pupils, 90 to 95% of the pupils doing worse, are proof that their teachers are better.
Okay, but are they doing worse?
Yes, that's the story we're discussing that you told me wasn't news. So talk me through how this is proof that their teachers are better than the teachers at the school where the pupils are doing better.
Well, but maybe I'm being stupid, but we don't have an accurate comparison, do we? Because we have that top 5% of children in terms of nascent ability.
We've got the nationally published exam results to look at for the comparison. You know that. But
all right, but the children at the bottom end, if you want to call it that,
well,
none of them are going to grammar schools. So we don't have a comparable.
No, we do.
Well, which is what?
We're comparing the highest. Well, this is why I think it's helpful sometimes to slow down and not make lazy accusations about middle-class parents.
I don't think I'm being lazy. Okay.
Well, then you're being stupid, which I'm trying to save you from, that conclusion.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yes.
All right. You take care, because I have loads of respect for you, and I'm really sorry you called me that. But you have
I didn't. You did. I said I didn't call you. Oh, no. There's a shame. Little lesson for everybody there. Lizzie's in Southsea. Lizzie, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James. Well, I've got two sort of things from both sides. I personally went to a grammar school, and I 100% believe that all of us at grammar school were treated the same. Whereas my daughter was in junior school, was like, you know, one of the top in junior school. We looked at various schools in the area, and she herself decided, I want to go to this one, which was comprehensive, but more fun. It had more music, more sport, etc. And as she was sort of quite a bright child, she actually got more support and was pushed quite a bit along. And from sort of very young, 11, 12, it was noted, and she had extra help, not just her.
I think this is what the last caller was trying to say, and it paints comprehensive schools in quite a poor light, really. So the equality of entry school is going to give more focus and attention to arguably the children who need it least.
Yes.
Because, they're looking at league tables, or they just get more of a kick out of an A-star student than they do out of bringing someone up from a D to a C?
No, I actually think the very top children in a comprehensive school have got lots of support. And so, I believe, do the very lower end.
Oh, good. But it's everybody in the middle that's the problem.
Yes.
Okay.
I suppose problem's not a good word. But yes, it's the middle that probably stay the same. Because I have two children. One was in the middle, one was at the top. And the teaching, they're at the same school. One got a lot of support, but one didn't.
And there it is.
Yeah.
So this is unsurprising to you, this research?
Totally, because I'm talking about someone who's now in their 30s.
What would happen? What would have happened if she'd gone to the grammar school then, to the selective school?
I obviously don't know, because she didn't.
You'd never be a phone-in host with that sort of attitude. Make something up.
No, but I will tell you that she did sit we have a super selective school in the area we used to live in, and she sat back. She had no tutoring, nothing like that, absolutely nothing. And the morning she came out and she said, I was finished. She said 20 minutes before the exam. It was so easy. And I thought, oh, goodness. She got such a low mark, I can't tell you. I
wondered where you were going with that, because yes, I had a moment like that in my youth as well. But you think you've aced it and you've absolutely carked it.
Yeah.
It's a funny one, isn't it? But I think you're probably knocking at the door of the answer to this question, but we need the grammar school perspective, don't we? We need the 11-year-old who arrives at grammar school absolutely top of the class and then doesn't reflect that when they get to the age of 16, which would mean that the kind of gold standard or Premier League status of these schools is misplaced for this small cohort of the cleverest kids, which I still find absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Lizzie. Callum is in Gothenburg. Callum, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. How you doing?
I'm pretty good, mate.
Good. Pleasure to speak to you. I went to a normal state primary school and then achieved quite well. 3 level 5s at SATs, including a 93 out of 100 for maths, which I was pretty proud of.
Yeah, I bet you were.
And then I went to a grammar school. And I'm very old, Callum. That puts you it right up in the top group, does it, in SATs and obviously your maths does. Even I can work that out. But that they would be. That would count you as high achieving, not just yes, well done, you've got in, but you'd sail into a selective school with those sort of records. Well, the selective school that I went to, it was an entrance exam.
Yes.
So it was like a non-verbal, verbal, things like that. So I don't know exactly where I sat on that, but
sure.
In terms of normal kids, I think my grades would have put me quite towards the top.
Yeah, got it.
But my main thought was it depends who isn't going on to achieve more. Just because my experience was, I grew up in Sandwell in Birmingham.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah. All my friends say I haven't lost my Brummy accent.
But you haven't got any Swedish thrown in there, so you've not done a Jan Molby when he was at Kidderminster Harriers, when he had a little bit of Scouse, a little bit of Danish, and then he picked up a little bit of Kiddie as well, Callum, which was a magnificent mélange of accents. But you're all hometown at the moment.
No. No, I promised to be the first Brummy Swede, so no, I'm sticking with it. Yeah, but just I grew up in a not fantastically rich area, but then going to grammar school, I grew up around a lot of people who had been in preparatory schools, who had fairly rich parents, and so it wasn't sort of it wasn't what I had experienced in my 11 years before then.
Sure.
So I feel like, although it was really good to broaden my horizons, and I think that's helped me in my career since, I feel like, you know how you talk about there's a Hogwarts effect at Parliament?
Yes.
My grammar school was fairly obviously a boarding school for rich families in the 100 years ago or whenever.
Right, yes.
And so we did all the everyone sits down and sings in assembly.
Yeah.
The headmaster and all the second masters have gowns, and a head boy and a blah blah blah.
Sure.
So that really wasn't what I had experienced. And the teachers, I don't know what the other callers had been saying, but it seemed like one of the other callers was saying that the teachers treated everyone as if they'd come from the same background.
Right.
And I really felt that. And I think it wasn't a complete fit with me and my personality and everything I'd experienced.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So you just felt a bit alienated, did you? Or uncomfortable?
I ended up being a bit of an all-rounder, so I wouldn't say I had a really best friend, but I could go and talk to anyone. I could talk to the kids that played sports. I could talk to the kids that did music. One thing, I mean, I really love football, but grammar schools don't play football.
No, my school didn't play football either. I got into a right old tizzy about that in my first year. I guess I understand what you're saying, but you're describing and the socio-economic impact upon your experience wouldn't explain the broader trend, would it? It would explain why kids from your background possibly didn't live up to their earlier expectations, but it wouldn't explain why the majority of children from your academic background didn't live up to their earliest expectations.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to forgive me because I haven't seen the stats and I haven't heard everything.
No, but it is just a general that the brighter pupil or the brightest pupil are more likely to get top GCSE grades at comprehensive schools than at grammar schools.
Maybe it partly explains it.
Yes, I think it explains you.
Yeah, but I think confidence is a factor for everybody. I think there's hardly anyone that can cope without confidence. Maybe it doesn't completely explain, but that's definitely at least my experience. And just to build off that, I eventually did go to a middle of the road university.
Right.
Did mechanical engineering, but since then I've done really, really well.
Good.
I think really well, a lot better than my parents have done.
Yes, and so you by osmosis you took things away from grammar school that would have been of benefit to you in the future.
Yeah, and also when I got to university, and it's a broader range of people, found people that I really connected with. I found my confidence came back, and I did really, really well.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Again, I think it's quite a personal perspective, but you add up all the personal perspectives, and you get closer to an objective one. Callum, thank you. I'll read this after the news. It's 11:31. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 11:34 is the time. I don't know if you have listened to the Huberman podcast. It's breaking all sorts of records. It's absolutely fascinating. I listened to it a bit secondhand, but I'm going to get stuck into it even more. If you're interested, I think, can we allow ourselves to say that on this show we're interested in how the world works? A little bit more perhaps than in lobbing rotten tomatoes at each other. It changes, I suppose. It depends what day you tune in. But the commentary from Andrew is fascinating. They did something on this, on Andrew Huberman's. He highlighted some data that might be relevant. You take kids with all the same set of problems or gifts, and then you divide them into two groups, and you praise one group for their intelligence, and you praise the other group for their effort. And then you give kids another set of problems to solve. And the performance of the children who'd been praised as intelligent went down significantly. So you've got 100 kids, right? Split them into two groups of 50 and give them the same problems to solve. And then rather, I guess, than having a numerical measure and saying you got X% and you got X%, you say to one half of the children, God, you guys are really, really clever. and you say to the other half, God, you guys work so hard. That's brilliant. That is really amazing levels of effort. Then you give them a second set of problems, and the performance of the ones that you've praised for their intelligence goes down significantly, and the performance of the children that you've praised for their effort goes up significantly. And so it shows that the reward for the effort is the best way to improve performance. And Andrew suggests maybe this is a root cause of awarding a label of intelligence to those children at a very early age. Yeah, that is fascinating. I don't know that they know they're intelligent, but you presume they do. You'd know, I mean, not unlike Callum, knowing now that he got 93% in his maths when he was 11 years old. So you arrive with an attitude. I don't know. It's just trying to fill in the gap of why bright pupils would be more likely to get top GCSE grades at comprehensive schools than grammars. Wesley's in Gravesend. Wesley, what do you reckon?
Hi, James. I'm a big fan. First time speaking to you.
Thank you, Wesley, and welcome.
Yes, okay. I just think we need to understand the difference between progress and attainment.
Yes.
You see, a student can attain a level 9, but make no progress because he came in on the highest point of the ladder.
Yes.
Whereas a student can come in on a comprehensive on a level 5 and get a level 7 in his GCSE and 2 levels of progress. So when we talking about progress and attainment, it's not just what their performance is. And obviously students who are heavily tutored to go into year 7, once they are in grammar school, the tutoring, the tuition is pulled under from them. And so they're left at their own, whereas and now that expectation, you've got a level, you're going to get a level 9, you're going to get a level 7, and because there's no room for that maneuver, it's and then when they don't achieve that, they haven't made progress.
So the grammar school teacher is more committed to dragging up the rest of the class than catering for the top of the class, and the comprehensive school teacher is devoting more time to the top of the class because
you bring everybody from the bottom up.
Well, ideally you do, although the research doesn't support that second statement.
Yeah, it's just that, okay, I have a student in the grammar school. My wife teaches in the grammar school. I teach in a comprehensive.
Well, hang on a minute. I need you also to have a child in a comprehensive school, and then you would be the absolutely perfect caller for this topic.
Well, no, the second one is preparing for his 11 plus next week.
Okay, well, no pressure then.
But as I see my wife, who's teaching in a grammar school, work every hour of the day trying to get students to achieve a level 9 because they're coming in on a level 9 already.
Yes.
So although she will achieve a level 9 as a teacher, she has just moved laterally.
Yes.
With that child's progress.
Yes. Yes, I think I understand.
The one caller who said that maybe the grammar school teachers don't work as hard compared, I don't know whether she actually meant that, but that's not the case what I see in my home because...
No, I don't know. I mean, I think that was an unfortunate call, and I certainly didn't intend to call Sarah stupid, but she did say some things that were a little bit odd.
So that's my argument, is that the students who are coming already high, there's no movement. So obviously, when you look at the greater scheme of things, you haven't made any progress. But when you compare to a comprehensive, you moved 2 levels, you moved 3 levels. Wow.
Yeah, I get that. I don't. I mean, what about the kid in a grammar school who starts on a 9 and then comes down? I don't quite. Does your analysis account for that?
Okay, because most kids who go into a grammar school are heavily tutored. They probably spend the whole summer, a few years before getting into a grammar school, heavily tutored. So they know every trick of the book. No.
I'm going to pick you up on this because this is like for like. So you've got a cohort of the brightest pupils, and you send some of them to grammar school and some of them to comprehensive school, and the ones from the same cohort, so they're at the same level at the comprehensive schools, do better than the ones at the grammar schools, which is counterintuitive to what most of us believe about...
Then maybe it's what you were saying earlier on. Maybe it's not an accurate science because you can't put a science on effort, isn't it? So I don't know. Maybe one.
So then, no, you can. Well, you can up to a point. You can put some measure on effort. You can count the amount of hours spent at a desk, can't you, and that kind of thing. But I think possibly you arrive at grammar school as one of the cleverest kids in the class, and you take your foot off the pedal a bit, Wesley. And there's not
Probably.
a lot the teacher can do about that. The teacher is keen to is teaching you on the same level as everybody else in the class, but you've taken your foot off the pedal because you think you're a genius.
But then the other thing, recently we've been hearing that Ofsted is going to go back into do grammar schools because 10 years they weren't checked and all of those things. So maybe the threat, because as a comprehensive or a non-selective, you got that every 3 years, every 4 years, so you have to keep it. Whereas in a school that hasn't been checked for 10 years, so that maybe, I don't want to use the word complacency, but maybe that idea of the stress is not there because these kids are going to get it, so we can just sail it through. Whereas in a non-selective, we have to push.
Yes, could be. There's a lot here. There's a lot to unpick, but that's definitely, well, I presume that would definitely be part of it. And good luck to your youngest next week, Wesley.
Thank you.
I'm sure I've got a feeling he'll ace it. 11:41 is the time. Other sort of parts of it, the stress of a competitive system may also have a negative effect on performance. So the more competitive grammar schools may actually have a negative effect on the brightest pupils. And then, of course, they acknowledge, as Wesley just alluded to, that there may be wider issues that the research could not identify. For example, the high performance in London may pull up the average for non-selective systems. But it's absolutely fascinating. Contrary to popular belief, selection was detrimental to high performers. Another suggestion could be because of the big fish, little pond effect, so that pupils in selective schools may be demotivated by seeing themselves as less able in comparison to their classmates. I think Kevin picks up on that in Glasgow when he says, "Hi, James, when you get in amongst pupils of your own academic level, you slowly lose that sense of being special and therefore your confidence diminishes." If you're only in top sets at selective schools, you're not going to stand out anywhere near as much as you would at a comprehensive school, and kids like standing out. And if you're standing out, you're going to push it even harder, perhaps. That's 2 Callums this hour. You wait years for one Callum to call in, and then you get 2 in the same hour. This one's in Fife. Callum, what would you like to say?
I know, James. I'm absolutely buzzing. And can I just say what a great contribution it was from the previous Callum. He really did us proud.
Solidarity for Callums.
Yeah.
Go on.
And I would like to sort of tie back to his answer and the big fish, small pond theory that you just talked about confidence. And I'll use myself as a nice example, but in a much later stage. So I had a similar effect when I left secondary school and went to uni. I was getting straight A's, and then I came along, and there was a much more competitive environment.
Yeah.
And I was no longer the brightest boy in the class, as you'd expect at uni.
Sure.
And that took a really detrimental effect on my motivation. And so I actually just found it tough to come into class. And
that's really interesting, isn't it?
When I didn't understand something, having the confidence to acknowledge you don't understand and then speak up about it and speak to your lecturers and actually get the help, that is something that if you don't develop in your early years, you won't be able to do it later. And that's something that maybe when these young 11, 12, 13-year-olds are having a completely new environment, which is already a very stressful time moving up, and the hormones are starting to kick in, and they're meeting all these new people, and then in addition to all these extra stressors, they don't feel as they're as bright as they used to be. And of course...
And that demotivates you somehow, because, I often think of sport when we're talking about academia, Callum, for some reason, because I was good at one and I wasn't very good at the other. And so if you're the best player in the team at primary school and then you get to secondary school and you're not, you might lose a bit of interest in sport because you loved being the best player in the team.
Yeah, and sport's an interesting analogy because you also get adulation for your talent if you're a talented sports person, or your effort if you're a hard-working sportsman. And for a lot of these football strikers, for example, they'll be really talented, they'll get loads of goals every season, and then once they hit a rut, they don't have the... I don't want to say strength, but they don't have the tools within them to actually push through and find their form again. Often, players can go years and years
used to it. Yeah,
kind of languishing.
Yeah.
And then
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of success, isn't it? Success breeds success. And when you're not feeling successful, you keep using the phrase, keep your foot off the pedal, mixing my metaphors horribly. Big fish, little fish. Thank you, Callum. I'm cracking on only because it's time for The Junction. It is 11:47. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Quite a lot of love coming in for that film I recommended on Friday, Red, White and Royal Blue. I am glad that everyone loved it as much as I did. It is an absolute cheer-up, feel-good movie of the very, very first order. 11:48 is the time. I wonder if they'll ever make a movie about you, Les, and the trials and tribulations faced by the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who joins me on the line now. Everything going well?
Good morning, James. Also, today's a landmark day for our city because after today, 5 million more Londoners will breathe cleaner air. And just to remind your listeners, the consequences of air pollution are so serious. You've had on your show before Rosamond, who I'm with this morning, who's the mother of Ella, who tragically lost her life in 2013. So we know the consequences of air pollution. The evidence is there. We know that the ULEZ works. The evidence is there from central London and inner London. And I just can't stand idly by when we're seeing in outer London some of the adverse consequences of air pollution.
What will success look like, and when might we expect it to be either achieved or missed?
So we saw with the ULEZ in central London and also with the expansion in inner London is the cumulative effects of air pollution being reduced that are important. So with both the central London and inner London ULEZ, it was a year later where you could see the benefits of the policy. So, for example, in central London, we saw almost 50% reduction in air pollution. By the way, a third fewer children being admitted to hospital with air pollution-related illnesses. In inner London, after a year, we could say a 21% reduction in the most toxic pollutant, nitrogen dioxide. And by the way, that meant children going to 1,400 schools benefiting from clean air. So a year after today, we'll have data in relation to the improvements or otherwise. The predictions are we hope to see a further reduction of 10% in nitrogen dioxide from cars, 16% reduction in particulate matter, and we expect to see a reduction in real terms of more than 360 tonnes of nitrogen dioxide. And the really, really good news is the same things that cause air pollution cause climate change. So if you deal with one, you deal with the other. It's a classic 2-for-1. We also expect to see a reduction of more than 23,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide.
I saw the Secretary of State for Transport, Mark Harper, this morning, picking up the line or parroting the line that this is nothing to do with improving air quality. It's all about raising money. I think his exact words were for Sadiq Khan. So we could clarify first, of course, that you won't be keeping any of the money personally raised by ULEZ charges. And second, the accusation that it is a stealth tax as opposed to an environmental policy.
Well, it was possible for me to do a cash grab had I acceded to the demand from Grant Shapps, the Secretary of State, when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak was Chancellor, which is to expand the congestion charge to raise revenues for TfL. I said no to that because that would have been a cash grab. I also said no when they demanded of me that I immediately expand the ULEZ before we had a scrappage scheme, before we'd had consultation. The only reason we're expanding ULEZ is because it's been shown to improve air. It will improve the quality of air. And by the way, in 2 years' time, as more and more vehicles become compliant, there are no net proceeds to TfL. In the meantime, any net proceeds to TfL goes towards improving public transport, particularly in outer London. I'll make this other small point, which is very important to clarify. It was this government that rightly published air quality directives demanding cities take action. This government has been supporting clean air zones around the country financially, from Birmingham to Bristol to Bath. But for reasons best known to Mark Harper and his government, they're refusing to give any support to London, but also turning what should be a non-political issue into a political football.
Stepping away from the political football, next time you come in to take calls from my listeners, we will probably hear from people who have been hung out to dry on this. I mean, I know you always promise to deal with them personally or to look further into their cases, but there will be people who haven't been able to go to work today or who are going to be going to work and taking home £12.50 less than they would have done previously. There may be people who are struggling to make the school run. You haven't done any research into the number of people who are going to be collateral damage, have you? And you haven't done much to comfort them.
So just to address those points, I mean, those are the sorts of points I've been listening to, and the caller that rang in when I was last on your programme last Thursday, we supported her as well because she was wrongly told that she couldn't get support. She can get support. She's got support. But what work we've done, and analysis we've done, shows, in fact, that in outer London, 9 out of 10 cars seen driving are already...
No, I know. I've heard all... I know this, but I don't know what is going... And I'm glad that you were able to help that mother that we spoke to on Thursday. I'm obviously going to double check. But the people who will not be helpable, there are going to be people...
I'll deal with that. Yeah, sure. So in the last week alone, James, we've had more than 15,000 applications for the scrappage scheme. And those are the people, if you and I were speaking 2 weeks ago, wouldn't have been helped. 14,000 cars have been scrapped. And we're going to continue to listen. There's still £100 million left in the scrappage scheme. I'm not going to stop listening today because we've started the US expansion. I will carry on listening.
But we don't have numbers, do we, for the people who are kind of between pillar and post, the people who don't qualify for help or...
We will do in about a month's time.
All right. Well, then we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a couple of questions coming in from my listeners? Why are vintage cars exempted from ULEZ?
So we rely upon the data from the DVLA, and the DVLA has a different tax classification for, inverted commas, classic cars. So we can't have a new database when it comes to the ULEZ scheme. And the second reason is, because classic cars, because they're classic cars, aren't driven as frequently as other cars. So in relation to, usage, it's less. But also classic cars can't be retrofitted like other cars can.
Okay. And Mike's been in touch to say that we had a reporter this morning testing air quality on the tube and comparing it to air quality not on the tube. Obviously, the air on the tube is often worse than the air overground.
Let me deal with that. I've seen this on social media.
Yeah, I have as well. I don't quite understand the point being made, but perhaps you could address it anyway.
Let me address it. So the air on the tube is within government limits, within health and safety limits. The air on the surface is in breach of government limits and is carcinogenic. So there's a big difference in relation to underground and surface air. But we're not complacent, notwithstanding the fact that we're within health and safety limits, we're within government limits on the tube. We're still cleaning up the dust particles on the tube to make sure
So it's dust on the tube and it's emissions overground. Dust underground, emissions overground.
Correct.
Right. So that... Right, well,
I think the point. I don't want to give these people the oxygen of publicity, but the point that's
hang on a minute. You're talking about an LBC reporter here. I think he gets the oxygen of publicity. It goes as part of the job description.
I think the point that's been made is, why are you sorting A, not B?
Yes,
we're sorting both A and B.
But A is currently worse than B, albeit that comparing dust to emissions is a slightly odd way to spend your morning.
It's comparing, grapes with watermelons. We know that air pollution on the surface is responsible for around 4,000 premature deaths a year, responsible for children having stunted lungs and a whole host of other health issues. We are cleaning up dust particles on the underground at the same time as addressing the air pollution crisis on the surface.
Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, many thanks indeed. The time is coming up to 11:57. Listen, you know my views on this. And essentially, I just hope it all goes away. It's up there with parking tickets, but you cannot argue with the argument about air quality in children's lungs. The number of children admitted into hospital with asthma. But goodness me, I tell you what I wish. I really wish that Zach Goldsmith's mayoral campaign hadn't been so racist, because then when I hear people attacking ULEZ, Sadiq Khan's ULEZ, who were perfectly comfortable with Zach Goldsmith's racist mayoral campaign, despite the fact that Zach Goldsmith we've got a much longer track record as an environmentalist than Sadiq Khan. I wish I could get a slightly better handle on whether their criticism is motivated by opposition to ULEZ or the same sort of opposition to Sadiq Khan that was typified by the racist nature of Zach Goldsmith's mayoral campaign. It's very hard for me to understand how you could be comfortable with a racist mayoral campaign being mounted by a massive environmentalist and then be uncomfortable with an environmental campaign mounted by the man that was the target of the racist mayoral campaign. I'm sure I'll be able to knit those points. I'm sure I'll be able to join those dots together at some point, but possibly because I didn't have the benefit of a grammar school education. I'm struggling at the moment to imagine what the uniting theme there might be, I'm open to suggestions on that. Back to the grammar school conversation, and the last word on that is Chris in Clitheroe. Chris, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yes, I've got one foot in each camp on this because my daughter failed the grammar school test and she went to a comprehensive, the local comprehensive.
Okay.
And my son has literally just sat his GCSEs from the grammar school.
Right, so he got in and she didn't.
Exactly, yes, that's true, yes, that's correct. No, she went to the comprehensive, and I do believe that all the positive reinforcement, all the certificates, she had a folder book of awards, stick as a telephone book after she left the comprehensive, and now she's studying a master's degree at Oxford University.
Oh, so, congratulations to both of you. That's fantastic. Yeah. But you think she did better? So at the comprehensive school, she got more of an arm around her, educationally speaking.
Yes, more. Yeah, she responded better to the positive reinforcement, the certificates, all the awards. That I think that definitely pushed her on to do better, and she had such a positive school experience that. That really pushed her into her A-levels. She did marvellously well at her GCSEs. Saying that, so is my son. My son's just done his GCSEs. He did really well at the grammar, but the grammar you get no feedback whatsoever.
Exactly. That's really interesting, isn't it? So in a way, for high achieving children, I mean, this opens up a whole heap of other problems. But the comprehensive school is looking after the high-achieving children better than the grammar school would, because the grammar school kind of wants everybody to be high-achieving, and the comprehensive school accepts that that's not possible.
I totally agree. I think the grammar expects the children to be high-achieving, where the comprehensive encourages high-achieving children to keep high-achieving.
There it is.
That's my experience.
Well, and you know, the plural of anecdote is not data, but I think we've come pretty close to a consensus during that hour, and it's an absolutely fascinating one. Tallies with some of the research, but it adds a new dimension to some of the conclusions that they arrived at. I'm getting a bit of jip for doing a hook and tease at 9:45 this morning, which I then characteristically completely failed to follow up. I'm not sure I can even remember. Oh, yes, I can. I did a hook and tease at 9:45 this morning towards the end of Nick's show, when I said, you're never going to guess whose mum has gone on hunger strike now. And I'm doing it again now, the hook and tease. Have you seen this story? Just every time you think that a story can't get any worse or more bizarre, or one of the protagonists in a story can't get into any more bother, they do. It's incredible. I'll dish after this. It's 4 minutes after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It is, I'm just going to respond to some of the texts. Yes, you did miss Doris Watch. Doris Watch is now no more. It is an ex-radio feature. Unless, and with that woman, you can't put anything past her, can you? Unless it turns out she's accidentally not resigned. So I've dealt with that one. Is it the mum of the Spanish Football Federation boss? Yes, it is, Michael. Well done. The mum of the president of the Spanish Football Association, Senor Rubiales, Luis Rubiales, went on hunger strike this weekend. Now, don't worry, this isn't going to be a conversation about football, or even particularly about that appalling violation undertaken by the head of the Spanish Football Federation. It's actually going to be a conversation about your relationships, your romantic relationships. Yes, your romantic relationships. But let me set the scene. But a quick nod. I didn't even bother tweeting this on Friday. I nearly tweeted on Friday. I wonder which one of the usual no marks will be the first to come out and say, what's wrong with that anyway? What's wrong with a man kissing a woman? And I keep a sort of watching brief on right-wing tabloids, and it's harder on Twitter because I've blocked most of the worst offenders. But you could have made a list, couldn't you? You could have made a little list on Friday of who do you think's going to come out first and say that it's absolutely fine for a man to kiss a woman who doesn't want to be kissed in front of several million people. It's just a sort of mitigating factor. That's absolutely. You could have made a little list. Or what if it was a bloke? It's just bizarre, isn't it? This apologism for misogyny. Well, it's not bizarre at all. It's I guess if you've spent your whole life being privileged, then equality feels like oppression. 6 minutes after 12. Just imagine if it was you minding your own business, someone came up and kissed you on the lips and you didn't want to be kissed by them. I mean, it's just bizarre. But anyway, it's not about that. It's not actually about the kiss. Neither is it about the football. Neither is it about the fact that the Spanish FA, I think, might have hired George Osborne as their head of PR. So disastrous have been the last few days for them. At one point, and I think they've stepped back from this now, at one point they were threatening to sue the player for saying that she had not consented to being kissed by the president of the Spanish Football Association. I tell you what is interesting, although we're not talking about this either this hour. What is interesting about this is that this is kind of what happens in a tyranny, isn't it? So you're seeing this now with Twitter as well. I presume that Luis Rubiales is in such total control of the Spanish FA that he prevails in every single situation. One day this show's going to be like that, but it's a long. Don't shake your heads at me like that. They're not even stopping shaking their heads. So it's a long way off. Where, you know, my word is law. My word is I can't even get a jingle. How many days was it? 91 days? 80? Well, lots of days to get a jingle. And then on the day I actually finally get a jingle, she's only gone and flipping resigned. But I reckon he's got that kind of my word is law attitude. You see it happening at Twitter with Elon Musk. I'm trying to think of other examples and failing. But do you see what I mean? Because there's no way that there's been a meeting of equals where they've said, I know what we should do. We should sue Jenny Hermoso for saying that you kissed her without permission. It's entirely come from him, and he kind of railroads other people into doing what he wants. And he prevails in all situations because he's just one of those people. But oddly, the producer and I had exactly the same reaction to the story of his mother, going on a hunger strike. Let me quote some of what she has said. She's described the people protesting against her son kissing a woman who didn't want to be kissed by him on the lips as an inhumane witch hunt. I think witch hunt is becoming an incredibly reliable phrase. I guess it always has been because there aren't actually any witches. But if someone describes it as a witch hunt, they're guilty as sin, aren't they? Donald Trump, it's a witch hunt, guilty as sin. Boris Johnson, I nearly said Boris Trump then. Boris Johnson, it's a witch hunt, guilty as sin. Luis Rubiales, his mummy says it's a witch hunt, guilty as sin. And in order to protest against the inhumane witch hunt being mounted against her son, she launched a hunger strike in a church yesterday, while investigators began a preliminary sexual assault investigation into her son's World Cup final kiss. Now, if you have ever fallen for the bile of professional misogynistic provocateurs, many of whom can be found in both right-wing media and, of course, social media, I think you need to imagine this happening in any other context. Imagine a headmaster marching into a classroom, grabbing the head of a female teacher, clamping the head of a female teacher and kissing her on the lips without permission. Imagine a police officer marching up to a female colleague. And if you want to introduce a celebratory context, you can, but I don't think you should, because this is about the action, not the context. Grabbing her by the ears effectively, clamping her head in his hands. This is a head teacher now with a female teacher. And kissing her on the lips. Imagine, if you would, Sheila Fogarty coming into the studio at 1 o'clock today, and me for no reason and without any permission whatsoever. I think she's on holiday, actually. I can't even conceive of what the correct reaction would be. Or rather, I can't conceive how anybody would react except in the correct... Well, you'd be absolutely outraged. Pick any context you want. Pick your daughter's football team with a male coach, and the male coach clamps her head in his hands and kisses her on the lips. This isn't about the kiss or the football, I stress. We'll get to what it is actually about in just a moment. Because I think that a final piece of the jigsaw fell into place yesterday when his mummy decided to go on a hunger strike. Don't you? This was the moment where you went, oh, of course. He's a little emperor. He's a little emperor, isn't he? whose mummy's always, she probably still washes his underpants and makes him sandwiches in the morning and sends him off to work with a little spring in his step and a damn mummy's little soldier. Hercules, Hercules, Hercules. That's what's going on here. That's what's happened. Because you probably heard me handling this topic on Friday in a I think a suboptimal way. There was an unsatisfactory element to my analysis. It was not our finest hour of the day, never mind the week or the month. Because I could muster up the outrage, but as a bloke, it's a different form of empathy. I can't imagine being on the receiving end of this treatment in the same way that every woman can. But the bit that was missing was that dimension that we have now witnessed. Thanks to Ms. Behar, who is holed up in the Divina Pastora Church with her sister in the coastal Andalusian resort of Motril. I've been there, blimey, just east of Malaga. It's where Mr. Rubiales grew up, and she says she will remain there night and day. Night and day, my little Hercules. Night and day until a desirable conclusion is reached, which means until everyone else agrees that her little emperor should be able to do whatever he wants, up to and including grabbing women by the head and kissing them on the lips, uninvited and unwanted. And that is the bit that is missing from this analysis. It's the bit that I needed on Friday to do a slightly better job of introducing a conversation about this, because I suspect that every, or not every woman, but an awful lot of women have encountered a mother-in-law or a boyfriend's mum who honestly thinks that they are perfect, who thinks that they are utterly golden. And the idea that your boy could do anything wrong at all, is actually inconceivable. So this is playing out on the world stage. 79 female players have now refused to play. And the Spanish Federation, led by Mr. Rubiales, has responded by saying they will take legal action against them. So, I mean, it is. I can say omnishambles. I can't say the other word. It is utterly beyond comprehension what the scale of the skip fire into which this story has turned is. I mean, it's unprecedented, whether you care about football or not. On the one hand, it's disgusting and really, really shameful. Tragic, actually, that the triumph has been overshadowed in this way by the conduct of this man. But sitting here as a man, trying to imagine what was going on, it eluded me on Friday. I failed on Friday. All 11 of the coaching staff have gone, except the manager, who's his mate, citing the behaviour of Mr. Rubiales. 79 female Spanish players have refused ever to play again as long as he's in the job, and they're still swinging. They're still coming out fighting. He is still claiming innocence, and his mummy's just gone on a hunger strike. So what I want to know, 0345 6060 973, is this. What is it like to go out with a bloke whose mum thinks he's Jesus? 0345 6060 973. I want to know what it's like. And my mum holds me in very high regard, but she also recognises that I am capable of being a complete divot on occasion. And I think that is healthy. You know, you all need a WASIC alarm in your life. And if you're lucky, you'll be either married to them or related to them. Or you'll have like a best mate who will just have a word in your ear and say, mate, wind your neck in. I sometimes feel like I've got 1.4 million of those looking at my inbox of a morning if I overstep any marks. But on this occasion, I'm actually all right. I would not, if you like, I could not. I can be supremely confident when I say that if I was filmed, not even filmed, if I grabbed a woman by the head, kissed her on the lips, subsequently, quotes, discovered, end quotes, that she neither wanted me to kiss her on the lips nor was prepared to pretend that it was consensual, my mum would not go on a hunger strike. She would not turn up at the Holy Family Church in Bewdley, barricade herself in, and refuse to depart until I had been somehow exonerated or granted impunity to carry on violating women in that way. But that's what I want to know about. That's what I want to know about. I want to know about what it's like when you go out with a mummy's boy. Okay? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. There's a serious element to this conversation which I want you also to talk about as well, because your mummies, the mummy's boy in your life, may have done things much worse than what Jose Rubiales has done. Much, much worse. But the point is that mum could never acknowledge it. Mum will always be on mummy's boy's side. Because this, for my money, is the most blatant and pathetic example of mummy's boyitis that I have ever seen in my life. And I just wonder what it's like to have it going on in your, if you like, in your actual life, in your real life. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. It doesn't even matter whether you're sort of misogynistically minded to defend the kiss, does it? Because the idea of someone's mum going on hunger strike over something like this is so utterly pathetic that you can't quite get your head around it. 17 minutes after 12 is the time. What is it like to deal with the mother of a massive mummy's boy? 0345 6060 973. Hit the numbers now. You will get through. It is 20 minutes after 12 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Richard in Tunbridge Wells speaks for many of us. If I'd done that, my man would have clipped me round the ear and marched me round to apologise to the other party. She'd have been right to do so as well, no matter what my age at the time. And just to be absolutely clear, there's no earthly way that I'm excusing the man's behaviour on the grounds of his mum being obviously a very indulgent and overbearing character. He is responsible for what he did. He is responsible for grabbing Jenny Hermoso by the head, clamping her head in his hands and kissing her on the lips quite a long amount of time with neither invitation nor permission, categorically. But we're talking about her going on hunger strike and therefore proving that she is one of those mums whose boy can do no wrong, and wondering what it's like to deal with someone like her. I'm happy to clarify that because, goodness me, the idea of blaming it on the mother is pathetic. You could have the most overbearing, indulgent mummy's boy mother in the world and still not be a mummy's boy. That I think is an important point to clarify. Lewis in Liverpool says, it's like my old man used to say, James, his mum still wipes his bottom and flushes the toilet for him. And Grant points out, what a way to show just why her son is so entitled. Hunger strike, yeah, that'll do it. 21 minutes after 12 is the time. There is some other news around at the moment. I don't know if you've seen this story about the live wriggling worm found in a woman's brain in Australia last year. It's been described in the news as a world first phenomenon. I'm not so sure.
So I would argue that to say that just because Channel 4 has been established as a public service broadcaster and just because it's in receipt of public money, we should never kind of audit the future of Channel 4 and we should never evaluate how Channel 4 looks in the future and whether or not it's a sustainable and viable model. It's quite right that the government should do that.
But Channel 4 is not like the BBC. It's not in receipt of licence fee money. It makes its money from commercial operations.
And so, although it's,
I mean, there are a range of views. Obviously, Channel 4 has taken a particular position on the future.
So can I just say that the discussions about what we do with Channel 4 and how we evaluate Channel 4 also happened before I arrived in my post. I've picked this up.
Just challenging the claims from Australia there. You know what they're like. You saw them in the Ashes. Just challenging the claims from Australia there that the live wriggling worm found in a woman's brain in Australia is a world-first phenomenon described by infectious diseases physician Dr. Sanjaya Senanayake as something he'd never expected. I think we might have encountered this medical phenomenon before. We've certainly encountered mummy's boys before, and some of this is, I mean, obviously I've treated it in a light-hearted way. Esther's text reminds me that for many people it won't be light-hearted at all. My ex-mother-in-law said she wanted to hit me when I turned to her son and asked him not to maul me when he was touching me inappropriately in front of his whole family. She was livid with me, James. That's what you're talking about. Some people will be familiar with this phenomenon. 12:23 is the time. Kirsty's in Exeter. Kirsty, what made you pick up the phone?
It was exactly that, James. My first thought was that a mummy's boy is quite dangerous.
Yes.
I went to my ex-partner's mum for help, and she blamed me, and then sort of turned me to be the crazy one, and just didn't help me. So as far as I was concerned, she was complicit in his abuse.
Would she'd never, ever, ever acknowledge that her son had done something wrong?
No, never. Even though it's now sort of subject to police inquiry, I was crazy. I'm wrong. He's done nothing wrong, and it's all my fault.
What made you think she'd be helpful? Because you'd known her for,
Because I screamed at her one day for help. I was desperate. I was like, help me. And she just was upset that I'd shouted at her. And I was desperate, and they never once asked me how I was after that. We never spoke about it again. And as far as I'm concerned, both his parents were complicit.
Well, we're walking a tightrope now, aren't we, between people being fully responsible for their own behaviour and yet also being, if you like, a result of nurture, a result of environment. You can't excuse him in any way for what he did on the grounds of how he was raised, but it's pretty clear that it would have been a contributing factor to his worldview.
Well, I've often thought about it myself. I've got a son, and I thought, as some people have said, it's not how you treat women, and you have to raise your sons to know how to treat women. And anybody, human beings, but it was like, I've sat there and gone, would I have thought this was okay? Would I not have clipped my son round the ear? I've often thought, does she really think he's done nothing wrong? And when I saw the mum go on hunger strike, I just thought, yeah, she would be there.
going on hunger strike to protect her against her boy against the inhumane witch hunt being mounted against her blameless boy.
And I've heard people ringing in, we sort of go out to parents. I don't know, why did I think she'd help? Because I thought you'd just see this
there'd be
behaviour.
some sort of solidarity. Do you know, there's another story in the news today about a mum who handed in her son after she recognised him from CCTV footage of a stabbing. You sort of hold up the two complete contrasts and wonder what it all means. Kirsty, I'm sorry for what you went through. I really am. 26 minutes after 12, but compounded, of course, by this notion of what's the word I'm looking for? The sort of ultimate indulgence of a mother. I've got a complaint, James. I think the term mummy's boy is grossly misleading. Just because my mum used to come into my flat and make my bed, clean and hoover, and then leave a plate full of sandwiches and treats for me on my return for the pub, this did not make me a mummy's boy, which is exactly what my ex-girlfriend would accuse me of being. Sophie's in Petersfield. Sophie, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello, Sophie.
How you doing, mate?
Very well, mate. How are you?
Good. It's a really interesting one, I'm sure, for many women that have been in relationships, with mothers with this sort of attitude.
Yes.
It sparks something within them, because it certainly does for me. I am now in my mid-30s, and in my mid-20s, I got into a relationship with a guy. He was adopted after his mother went through some serious pain and trauma. She tried to have IVF to have kids, and her surname was a very common surname, and sadly the paperwork got mixed up, and she nearly died trying to conceive. So they then went down the adoption route, and all of this I didn't really put together until I had moved in with the guy, and things started to sort of come to the surface that, he was golden boy, he couldn't do anything wrong.
I see what you mean. I wondered why you were sharing all the biographical detail, but it is as if she spends her life wrapping him in cotton wool and gold plate, as it were.
And it was, you just weren't seen and heard in the relationship whatsoever, and you were kind of looking for outside help because, I would bring things up and there would never be a conversation about it. And actually it turned out quite abusive because he was never taught to listen to other people's opinions or feelings. And, it just ended up being a really abusive relationship just because he hadn't been taught how
and he'd never thought he'd done anything wrong even when he had. But that's the amazing thing. Go on. That's the amazing thing about this, isn't it? Is that how can he possibly? His mum is going on hunger strike to defend him. If there was a little voice in his head saying, "Do you know what? Maybe we're the baddies. Maybe I have done something wrong here." It's a bit. I mean, 79 footballers have said they're never going to play again, and the entire coaching staff has resigned. And that little tiny voice in the back of his head saying, "Maybe I've done a boo-boo," and then, "Oh no, Mummy's gone on hunger strike. I'm definitely in the right."
Yeah. It's sad. It's sad. It really is sad to see because I just what a sad existence to just be that ignorant.
Yes, and on it goes. These wheels are constantly turning. So, Stephanie, thank you. Sophie, thank you. Sorry, Stephanie's up first after the news. Looking at the phenomenon, for want of a better word, of the Spanish football president's mother launching a hunger strike in a church yesterday as prosecutors investigated a preliminary sexual assault investigation into her son's World Cup final kiss. Fascinated by what it's like to be with somebody whose mother still exerts such astonishing influence over the boy. But does anyone want to have a go at imagining what's going on in Mummy's head? Does anyone want to have a go at just what has led her to this pass? So she woke up yesterday morning. She sees her son, public enemy number one in Spain. She sees that the entire coaching staff has resigned except the head coach, who's his mate. She sees that 79 female players are refusing to play again. He's been suspended, or FIFA, the international body. The Spanish football authorities have made the frankly astonishing feat of making FIFA look good. They've allowed FIFA to take the moral high ground because they've stepped in and said, up with this we will not put. 15 days he's been given by she's been given, Jenny Hermoso, by the National Prosecutor's Office to contact them as an alleged victim of sexual assault, which could bring criminal proceedings. And yet Mum thought yesterday, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on hunger strike in the church. What's going through Mum's mind at a moment like this? 0345 6060 973. It's 12:30. And Amelia Cox is here now with your headlines. 12:33 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It's taken, as you've probably already noticed from the calls, a rather more serious turn than perhaps I was expecting, this conversation about Mum going on hunger strike because son has kissed a woman, grabbed a woman, clamped a woman's head between his hands and kissed her on the lips without permission and ended up in understandable bother. But Mum thinks he's the real victim here and has gone on hunger strike to prove it. Keith's wondering what would happen if they've got weddings booked in the church. It might count as an added attraction. Some people have a chocolate fountain. You've got a hunger-striking mother of the Spanish Football Association's president just sort of creeping into the corner of the photographs. I don't know. But there are clearly serious elements to this, which we'll continue to explore. But don't feel excluded. We manage usually to navigate light and shade quite effectively on this programme. So sort of more relieved, if you like, or light-hearted contributions also welcome. This is from Zoe in Bristol. Rubiales' mother has behaved exactly as expected of a parent of a narcissist. She's always seen him through rose-tinted glasses. He can do no wrong in her eyes, leading him to be the spoilt and entitled individual he clearly is. I'll read this out again because it is something I've addressed. He did this, not his mother. You're doing the usual male thing of blaming women. Think about it. I have, and although I think nurture clearly plays a role in his development, responsibility for his behaviour lies 100% with him, just as responsibility for going on hunger strike, which is what we're discussing, lies 100% with her. Matt, again, taking things in a much darker direction than perhaps I expected. My wife's ex was done for having indecent images of children on his computer. His mother still thinks that somebody else planted them there, despite all the completely clear evidence. And this very poignant contribution from Sharon. 8 months into our fledgling relationship, James, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had weekly chemo on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He couldn't take me on the Tuesdays because it was his mum's library day. Oof. We're no longer together and chemo is 1 session away from the end. That's great news, Sharon. And I would quite an incredible... I'm just trying to imagine the conversation. Is he too frightened of telling his mum? that he can't take her to library day. Therefore, he's not going to take his girlfriend to chemo. I don't know. And James, you must research enmeshment. It's like codependency, but worse. Every mummy's boy is probably deeply enmeshed with the mother. 12:36 is the time. Achia is in Glasgow. Achia, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
So I have a family member who's had multiple sexual crimes against him and convicted. And actually, his crime actually had started from the age of 12.
So you're related to the offender?
Yes.
Right, okay, carry on. Go on.
The mother throughout, now he's murdered someone.
What?
There's been sexual assaults on a nurse. There was actual sexual crime where I had to get the police involved due to him calling me with sexual sounds on the phone.
Right.
And his mother, all throughout his life, has justified his actions and blamed the other person. She seems to be under the impression that if you're supporting your child, that doesn't mean you accept what they've done and support them anyway. She's under the impression she has to deny it all to live in this fantasy that this boy or this man, he's in his 40s now, is not as bad as what everybody says he is, regardless of the crime he's been charged with.
He's been convicted of murder, has he?
Oh, yeah. He was 12 years old when he was convicted of murder. There was an incident, I think he was about 15, when he was in a stolen... This is a different incident. He was 15, he was in a stolen car and ran into a policeman. The mother blamed the policeman for jumping in front of the car, not that he put the car into the policeman. When I had obviously spoke to her about what had happened with me and the calls, at first she was very much... To be fair, her first instances was screaming at him, saying, "Why did you need to do it to her? Why not want somebody else?"
Good Lord.
So she was...
Yeah,
Sorry.
It's a fairly dysfunctional setup all round by the sounds of it.
Oh, and at first when I had explained what had happened to me and he was calling me, this was after 5 previous sexual charges.
So he could do anything then. He could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose a single scintilla of support from his doting mother. She's now, just to clarify, actually, she's never been on hunger strike.
No, she's never went on.
Well, don't give her ideas. It's 12:38. Thank you for that. This is absolutely surreal. Crikey, Marion, my ex-mother-in-law's defence of her son suggested I was making a fuss over the fact that he had been having a secret affair in another country for years because while he was out of the country, he was earning more money. Caroline's in Glasgow. Caroline, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
So I think the sort of mindset of the mother screams of the internalized misogyny and rape culture that we do see in a lot of women.
Yes.
Some of the fiercest arguments that I've had regarding feminist issues have come from women themselves. You had that text on Friday, I remember, from someone who said they were a proud feminist saying, "Oh, it's a kiss, it's not a big deal."
Yes.
And I think it's a way...
Why is it more shocking to me to get that from a woman than a man?
Well, I think, personally, I see it as a way of kind of dealing with trauma that I think people don't realize maybe that they've had. I've spoken to so many older women in my life who've said, "Oh, I've never had anything sexist happen to me." Even though most women that I know, if not all of them, have a story of something non-consensual that's happened to them, whether it was, someone touching them on a bus or something more serious.
So it didn't do me any harm syndrome, isn't it? And you have to persuade yourself that it hasn't done you any harm. Certainly in the moment you do quite often because the alternative is immediate trauma, really, and yet you carry that into other people's experiences. So in convincing yourself that it hasn't done any harm, you end up being someone who turns to somebody suffering and telling them that they're not suffering at all or that they should pull themselves together and get over it.
Exactly. Or, I've even had people say to me, "Oh, well, I have friends who've had way worse things happen to them than what happened to you." Yeah,
that's partly survival, isn't it, I think?
I think so. And I think it combines with the fact that we're not, as women, we're socialized to not value ourselves in the same way that we value men. Like we're not taught about bodily autonomy from a young age. We're taught, if a boy teases you, it's because he likes you. It's, you shouldn't complain about it. It's a nice thing.
And boys will be boys as well.
Boys will be boys. Yeah. Oh, they can't help themselves. That's just how they are.
I always remember, and I've mentioned this on air a few times, but not for a while, when we used to do phone-ins about, and I was very much a product of my generation and privilege, and you do phone-ins about what we would once have called office banter or badinage, and women of a certain age would ring me to insist, up to and including having their backsides pinched or things like that, that it was just fun or flirtatious, or that they missed it, wolf whistling. They missed being wolf whistled when they got older and it stopped happening anymore. And as a man, I don't feel that I can push back very hard against those, but I think that's the attitude you're describing.
Absolutely, yeah. I was on a walk with my stepmom one day, and a man honked at us. And I was offended, and she said, "Oh, I thought it was kind of nice."
And how do you tell her that it isn't? How do you explain to her that it isn't? If she genuinely, does she genuinely mean that, or is she?
I think like it's a difficult thing being a woman in a patriarchal system. I think because we are taught that's flattery. That's something that you should value.
Yeah, of course. That's what you should seek. That's what you should seek and value. And therefore, yes, I hadn't thought of it that way around. So it goes right back, which is why I think, although, pointing out that the mum is not responsible for the child's behaviour cannot be understood without reference to nurture. Amanda in Hornchurch goes completely in the opposite direction. Thank you, Caroline. She writes, place the blame where it needs to be placed, James, with the parent. The child has been groomed and taught to behave like this. The child has to learn to undo all the adulation and inappropriate close relationship. And she recommends a book called Silently Seduced. I don't think you can go that far, because that gives a free pass to the people who are behaving abominably by laying all of the responsibility for the behaviour at the feet of the mum rather than the actual offender. In this case, of course, Luis Rubiales, whose mother, Angeles Bejar, is now on hunger strike in a Spanish church. That's the moment at which you think this story has been conjured up by Armando Iannucci or somebody, he's such a brilliant writer, Armando Iannucci. I was about to name another show then and remembered that he wrote that one as well. I was about to name a Partridge. It's an Alan Partridge type scenario where the mum goes on hunger strike in order to protect the son from proper scrutiny and criticism. If you want to share your experiences of either dealing with a mother who will accept no, a lot of you are mentioning Prince Andrew, which I think is probably a little unfair on the late Queen. I don't think she was indulging him in any way when she provided the 12 million quid to allow him to avoid going into court. But if you've got an example of this, or you want to have a crack at imagining what might be going on in the mind of the mother at this moment, 03456060973. I'm going to reserve a special prize. If you've got a wedding booked in this church at any point in the next few days, then I could probably get you a very good deal with a tabloid newspaper. I could certainly get you a world exclusive on LBC. What would you do if your wedding is scheduled to unfold at the Divina Pastora Church in the next few days, and you've just learned or just read that it is currently occupied by not only the mother of Spain's football president, but also her sister, both refusing to leave until this inhumane witch hunt against her son, Luis Rubiales, is over? I don't know quite how it can end to Ms. Bejar's satisfaction, but one has to assume it would be some sort of affording of impunity. It's 12:45. 12:48 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we continue to examine this frankly remarkable hunger strike and the concept of a mummy's boy. Text out wondering why we don't have mummy's girls. I don't know. You have daddy's girls, don't you? But I don't know. It's a slightly different dynamic from a mummy's girl. And quite a few people wondering whether Nadine Doris should have gone on hunger strike in protest at the witch hunt against Boris Johnson. I'll leave that one hanging. Grace is in Bristol. Grace, what would you like to say?
Oh, James, I had so much to say.
Well, take your time. You've got 9 minutes.
I'm so nervous.
No, it's only me. It's only me.
I can't tell you how many times I've tried to call you, but today I just had to do it today.
Go on.
Anyway. First of all, when I saw the way he reacted afterwards, I thought, narcissist, straight away narcissist. The reason I'm saying that is because if you look into narcissism, and today it's just confirmed it. It's parents that cause narcissism in their children.
Is it?
Yes. The reason I only know that because we've had experience of it in our family.
Sure.
And I looked into it. I read, and honestly, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. If you have time, look into narcissism, read about it. It's absolutely fascinating. Now, you have to point out to your children, even when they're adults, if they have made a mistake or if they're wrong. I'll defend my kids to the end. But if I feel, I'm not saying I'm right, if I feel they need to look at a situation slightly differently, or if I think they're probably not right, I will tell them.
It's really one of the most central responsibilities of parenting in a way, isn't it? Because that's how you learn boundaries. You never,
But you know what, though, James? It's tough to do it.
Sometimes.
It's easier to defend your children, obviously, than to tell them that they're wrong. And the fact that I heard that today, what she did, I thought, oh, there we are. Thank you very much.
I thought so did Eleanor. We both thought that as well, and we come at it. Obviously, I'm a man and she's a woman, and we're quite different ages. And I use the phrase "little emperor," and she used the phrase "little king," and that suddenly helps you. It fills in a gap in your understanding of how he could possibly not so much have undertaken the behaviour that he undertook at the time, because profoundly wrong though it is, you've got the rush of blood to the head defence. But this self-justification subsequently is absolutely incomprehensible until you realise that he's probably spent his whole life never ever being told that he's wrong or that he's done something wrong.
Oh, James, that is it in a nutshell. It's his reaction. It's a narcissist. It's never their fault. It is never their fault. It is always somebody else's fault. And they have a weird recollection, as the Queen would say.
Yes.
Recollections may vary. They have a weird recollection of the actual incident. They will see it completely different.
Oh, we've all known people like that, haven't we?
Oh, my God.
And you say, but that's not what happened. I mean, this is insane. That's not what happened at all. But they honestly believe that it is. And that they're the victim of the piece. They're the victim of the piece.
Absolutely. They're always the victim, and it's never their fault. Please, oh my God, it's so interesting to read about narcissism.
I have done a bit. No, I do know a little bit about it. I did it when I was writing the Boris Johnson chapter of my new book.
Okay.
Grace, I thought that it might be helpful to come to an understanding of that. Well, yeah, but also I am uncomfortable with the idea that all bad behaviour is somehow explicable by nurture or parenting.
No,
you can't take responsibility away from the culprits, can you?
No, it's not that. It's his reaction to it.
Yes.
It's his reaction. It's not what he did. He takes full responsibility for that. It's not his mother's fault, the way that he behaved. It's his reaction to it. And how he's dealt with it.
Yeah, and I cannot be in the wrong. I am absolutely... And that leap, and you saw this with Boris Johnson as well, the leap from guilty to victim is incredible.
Not my fault, mate. Somebody else. Nothing to do with me.
It's a witch hunt. It's a kangaroo court. No. If I've been caught bang to rights, it's because the people catching me bang to rights are at fault. It's got nothing to... I mean, it is actually a bit uncanny now you come to think of the Boris Johnson parallel. It's like everything's a witch hunt, everything's a kangaroo court, and I guess Nadine Doris plays the role of the hunger-striking mother in this piece, doesn't she? Good Lord. Thank you, Grace. I hope it was worth the wait. I hope it lived up to expectations. Eric's had a swing, and do you know what, Eric? I'm going to take this one on the chin. Eric has written, James, I'm sorry, but the Queen did indulge her son. Shame on you. Shame on you always draws the eye somewhat in the inbox. £12 million to avoid having to go to court. Say it as it is, you have gone down in my estimation, although I doubt it will worry you. It does worry me, Eric. I don't know why. You could quite possibly have phrased that message differently and it would have been water off a duck's back. But I think your obvious civilisation and concern has actually, worry's quite a strong word, but it's certainly given me pause. It was probably the act of an overindulgent mother, was it? To give Andrew Windsor £12 million to pay off the woman who'd accused him of... I mean, now that I'm putting it like that, I can't quite believe... I think I've got that slightly... I didn't have it when she was alive, right? I was happy to criticise the late Queen when she was alive, but now that she's dead, I think I suffer also from a little bit of what you might call environmental influence or cultural osmosis. You can't say anything bad about the late Queen. I don't want to say anything bad about the late Queen, but if you're having a conversation about overindulgent mothers somehow facilitating the appalling behaviour of sons, and I get loads and loads of messages mentioning Prince Andrew, and then I mention them, and then I say, oh, no, there's nothing relevant here at all. I think I misstepped then. I think you're right. I think it's perfectly reasonable to bring her into or to bring that relationship into a conversation about mothers who will never really allow the scales to fall from their eyes regarding their own son. So, Eric, I hope that I have risen once more in your estimation by acknowledging the accuracy of what you say. Now, I want to close today by waving farewell to the woman playing the role of the hunger-striking mother in the story of Boris Johnson, to Nadine Doris. We've already listened to one of her greatest hits, which I used as evidence that perhaps this story in Australia about a woman being found with a brain-eating worm in her head is not actually the unprecedented scientific discovery that Australians are claiming it is. But I want to leave you with a couple more examples of just how awful this woman is and how welcome her departure from the political stage will be. And to be honest with you, we were spoilt for choice, and I've allowed myself one that's personal reference, but we'll begin with this moment of madness.
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister recently in the last 24 hours?
Why? Why are you asking me that question?
I'd like to know.
We've communicated.
I'm really confused. Is that a difficult question? I'm just asking if you've spoken to the Prime Minister in the last 24 hours.
We have communicated.
Okay. What has he communicated to you?
Well, that's. I'm not going to tell you the extent of my communications with the Prime Minister. I mean, I've answered your question. We have communicated. What is your next question?
What's his mood?
I'd say his mood was very, very positive, extremely positive. I mean, onwards is one of his favourite expressions. I think he's very positive.
Has he changed?
Changed what?
His attitude.
To what?
To the way he runs the government.
Charlie State, I tell you, doesn't get the respect he deserves. One of the absolute best in the business there on BBC Breakfast, dealing with someone who, remember, was drawing a salary at the time to both represent constituents and serve taxpayers. Although, to give Nadine Doris credit, at the time, I think she was representing constituents, at least in some senses. But not turning up in the House of Commons for God knows how long is a fitting end to her so-called career. And I'll leave you with this little moment, which perhaps explains my own animus and something that I hope I never have to endure again in my entire career. If she'd said this in public, I could have taken her to the cleaners.
James O'Brien. I think if you search the number of times I've tweeted James O'Brien, I think you might find it's 2. If you search the number of times James O'Brien has persistently tweeted me, to the point where we had at my office a number of years ago, probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, had to write to Global complaining that his behaviour was stepping into the realms of harassment. That was at the point which I sent that tweet. If you search James O'Brien's tweets of me... I have searched that because at the other committee... Including the ones at the other committee, you said that you'd responded to abuse from him, and I have actually searched that. And I can't find this abuse that you talk about, but I have found you asking for James O'Brien to get the sack. You also implied that he had mental health problems. You said, I don't think he's a well man. He needs removing from his platform abuse. And you said, separate tweet, you said, I've had to email his employer a number of times. Now, I don't think it's appropriate for you as a politician to be trying to get somebody the sack. But let's move on to another tweet that you sent. Can I answer that? Please do. So, Mr. Chairman, just what I'd say is that, along with a number of female politicians, I am subject to a small number of men who do tweet about me obsessively, aggressively, and pleasantly, and James O'Brien is one of them. Well, I can't find those tweets that you mentioned, but here's something that you did retweet about, and I'll quote it. I believe James O'Brien of LBC fame is a hate preacher, a liar, a misogynist, a UK hater, and an apologist
for Islamic atrocities. You're in no position to talk about James O'Brien saying offensive things about you. You tweeted that. I mean, apart from being actionable and defamatory, it's grotesque.
Can't really argue with that from John Nicholson there. Funny that we were just talking about how narcissists behave in an abominable fashion and then immediately, without even blinking, somehow manage to turn themselves into the supposed victim. Lying and libelous. Farewell, Nadine Doris. May you never darken our doorsteps again. If you did miss any of today's shows, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can also rewind live radio. You'll find all of LBC's shows there to catch up on, as well as all of Global's live radio stations. So do rewind live radio on Global Player. You can download it for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Swarbrick back with you in his usual slot at 4. Sheila Fogarty on her travels, which means you get Sangeeta Maiska today. 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 Sangeeta